and then you play in the nightcap to advance to the finals today, and unfortunately, they came up just a little bit short. Is Willie with us?
Is he? Yeah, Willie, there?
Yeah, I'm here, guys.
Okay.
Sorry, I just realized I was on the wrong Wi-Fi. Sometimes my house picks up my neighbor's Wi-Fi, which is really powerful. I probably ought to go to her house and do the show from there because I think she probably has the best Wi-Fi in the neighborhood. But
wow,
my computer picks up hers, and I have to switch to mine, and it takes a couple seconds to make the switch.
Yeah,
over
that
there.
is powerful when your own house goes to the neighbor's house first.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Now, I don't think it's better in my house, but I think it would be better if I were in her house. But anyway, I don't live over there. So, yeah, it was a good tournament, a long tournament in Birmingham. We beat a team from Michigan last night in the first game. We had to beat another team. I was just trying to look up exactly where they're from. There's some teams that pick up players from a number of different states, and this is one of them. But they pitched a great game. They beat us 3-1, sent us home. So we had a road trip back from Birmingham last night. But great learning experience. There's good and there's bad of travel baseball. You know, I shouldn't say bad, but there's strengths and weaknesses, I would say, of the format. But one of the things is you get to throw yourself in there with a lot of great players from all over the country at things like this. So, wow, it's quite the experience. But good to be back home for sure.
No doubt about it. Tampa, I guess it was good for them to be back home too, huh?
Oh, yes, the mayor is very happy in Tampa.
The mayor she's probably strutting around town these days going, I see how great this is. That was great to say that.
I told you. They did exactly what I told them to do.
That was a great proclamation by me.
It's a middle finger to Coach Willie.
She took it. She just stuck it to Coach Willie. She went completely against what Coach Willie's all about and lived to tell about it. She can brag about it now.
So the Lightning get it done. Vasilevsky is just ridiculous. He wins the Conn Smythe, which is the playoff MVP. Imagine that. Not only did they win, and not only did he look good, he pitched another series-clinching shutout. The 5th time he's done that. I mean, how ridiculous is that? Just think about that. He has clinched series for Tampa now 5 times by pitching a shutout. Get out of here with that. I mean, come on.
You know,
congratulations to the Lightning.
Yeah, if there was any doubt that he was the best. By the way, the team that beat us last night is from Austin, Texas. So that's gives you an idea of where these teams come from. We played a team from Dallas and a team from Austin. So they're from all over the place at these things. But if there was any doubt of where of Vasilevsky's status as the best goalie in the world, I don't think there's any doubt now, right? We'll talk to Elliot about this at 1 o'clock. But, you know, we were trying to do our predictions. If you wind the clock back, Darren, to when we were breaking down all the matchups in the first round, you know, we were debating, could the Panthers, who had a great season, knock off the Lightning in the first round? And I really thought about it because the Panthers had such a great season. Of course, they lost one of their best players in Ekblad. But remember, Tampa was dealing with Stamkos being hurt at the end of the season and then trying to get Kucherov ramped up and ready to go. But the thing that separated them, in my mind, was Vasilevsky. Yep. And sure enough, I just think that was the thing. You know, the Islanders played a tremendous series against against Tampa Bay. But Vasilevsky at the end just was a little bit better. So I think they had the best team on the ice, but then on top of that, they had the best goalie. And that's just so hard to beat. So I really think that it'd be a great debate. This may be one for us to throw at Elliot too, Darren, is are they the best team of the era? Okay, let's take the 2000s, or let's take the salary cap era, right? Post 2004, the Armageddon missed the whole season, right? 04, 05, there was no season, right? For some of the younger hockey fans, you might say, Dad, there wasn't a season? Yeah, we missed a whole season. But out of that, you got a salary cap, which gave Nashville and a lot of markets a chance to compete. Right now, everybody's got similar resources, not totally equal, but similar resources to compete, right? So in that era, you've had how many great teams? Well, you had Sidney Crosby's
this
Penguins.
This is the second back-to-back since that happened. So them and now the Lightning and the Penguins. That was it. That's the only two teams that have strung together back-to-back since what you're talking about.
Right. And you had the Blackhawks who won 3 out of 5. They never won the back-to-back, right?
3 of 6.
3 out of 6. Yeah, you're right.
3 out of 6.
So I think those would be the 3, right, in the salary cap era that you would say have stood out above everybody else.
I mean, LA deserves to be in the discussion. LA deserves to be in the discussion. They're not going to win the discussion, but they deserve to at least be in there. I mean, when you win 2 cups, right? I mean, you deserve to be in there in the discussion.
Yeah, I would vote for the Lightning, though. I think. I think some Blackhawks fans would say, "Wait a minute."
I think Pittsburgh fans would probably stand up pretty quickly
it'd be a heck of a debate. Let's throw that at Elliott just to see how he would answer that.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
Vasilevsky might be the reason that I would take Tampa. Of course, it's fresh in my mind, right? Mm-hmm. It just happened. But I just, the things that they did to fine-tune after they lost in the first round famously. They had their best regular season of any of them a couple years ago, and then they lost in 4 straight to Columbus. But what did they do? They found that glue group, with Barclay Goodrow, Coleman. They brought in Patrick Maroon. Those elements were critical to
Ryan
them
McDonough was huge.
Ryan McDonough, absolutely the right kind of guy. And I think they had traded for him when I think he was on the team that got swept, right? But and then how about last night? Who scores the goal? An unknown guy, Ross Colton, but he's a great player, right? He had some good games against the Predators. We're like, wait a minute, we got to cover Braden Point. You got Hedman over here. You got Stamkos over there, and then who gets you? Ross Colton? Come on. But Ross Colton, if you looked, he had a lot of success in the regular season. So even the last guy on the roster, Matthew Joseph, guys like that, those guys are good. Those guys are really good. So tremendous team building. It's a tremendous accomplishment to do what they did, what they have done. I mean, maybe they're not done. Could they win again next year? Why not?
They could. Honestly, they could.
To be able to put a team together like that in a hard salary cap, pretty special. I'm just glad they're not in the Predators division next year.
Yeah, goodbye. See you, Tampa. I enjoyed this division, but I think, after further evaluation, good riddance. Back to the old division, especially with the news in St. Louis. Tarasenko wants out. I just kind of feel like, I know the Blues feel like, their window is still there. I don't believe that. I believe they've just lost too much. I mean, I don't know how you overcome losing the pieces. I mean, Stastny's gone. We just talked about Maroon, who just won his 3rd consecutive cup. They've just I'm drawing blanks. Who went to Vegas, signed the big deal? Pietrangelo.
Yeah, Alex Pietrangelo.
I mean, they have lost some horses since they won the cup. And so I don't believe they're still in that window. I don't. I believe they have tailed off. I'm not sure what one. Look, I guess what I'm getting at is I just don't believe the division gets weaker, in my opinion. Winnipeg and St. Louis and Minnesota are good teams. I don't think they're at the level of Carolina and Florida. Is that fair to say? And it's got the powerhouse team, Colorado, like Tampa. So once you get past Tampa, a.k.a. Colorado, now you look at the others, the Winnipegs, the St. Louis, the Minnesotas, and I just don't think they're at the same level as Florida and Carolina. I mean, I just think that was Dallas, is obviously a factor. They're not getting rid of Dallas. So in Chicago, may be better. I don't think they're ready to jump up there just yet. But I just think the division will get a little bit more manageable. I feel that way. I feel that way today.
It's not much. It's not much. I like we said before, I don't think it'll be as top heavy, but I do think there'll be more parity. It'll be a deeper division in some ways. So I don't know if that makes it easier, but it will be different. It will be different. But it's going to be, these next few weeks, that Tarasenko article you were referring to, I was looking that over.
Jeremy Rutherford, who you sent to us this morning, I read the whole thing. It's pretty
it is interesting. Like, let me ask you this. Like, because I think we would both admit, with St. Louis not in the division, I wasn't watching them nearly as close, right? When they were in the Central, you keep track of what the Blues are doing. You see them a lot. You're following what they're doing. But I did not realize that Tarasenko had 3 surgeries on his shoulder.
Either.
3. Like I knew he had, kept having trouble with it. I just didn't know all the details. And that article really opens up some interesting things. It's like, number one, forget about all of the friction that it's caused between Tarasenko and his inner circle and the team. Right, the 3rd surgery, it points out in the article.
Tell everybody, yes.
Okay, so he had 2 surgeries different by the Blues
by
doctor,
the team, right.
And then decided, you know what, this didn't work. I'm getting my own group to do
second opinion.
Another procedure. Yeah, yeah. So that has created a rift, apparently, between the organization and Tarasenko, and that's part of the reason that he has asked for a trade. So put all that aside for a minute, but just ask yourself, you've got 2 years left on a 7.5 cap hit. That's expensive. So would you really want Tarasenko? How badly? He's 29, but what are you getting? Like, you need some serious medical reports, right, to know if he's the same guy, because his production has been way down. He's missed a ton of time. But that's a high price tag. So I think
a lot of people are
debate
questioning
on what you would give up, right? What would you give up to get a guy like that?
Well, that's what a lot of people are questioning. His age, all the surgeries that you mentioned. What is he today, player-wise? He's still a very special talent, but I guess he's now out of his 20s, and he is.
He'll be 30 in November, I think. He'll turn.
I thought
30
he was.
during
I
the
thought he
season.
just turned 30. No.
I think he turns 30 during the season next year. So either way, it's and he has a no trade clause. So you might have interest in him, but he might say no thanks.
Actually, 30 in December. So
December.
Okay,
So
30 next year.
Yeah.
Okay, next season. So he's still in his 20s.
So is it okay, we'll give you money back, like we'll give you a big contract in exchange for him, or is it I'll take the contract off your hands, but I'm not giving you anything back for a guy with that much risk? I think you might have a wide range of opinions, right? I think there were some GMs, unnamed GMs quoted, saying, yeah, we've looked at this, but we're really not interested because of we don't have enough cap space to try this, and B, there's too many question marks about his health.
Well, in the article it says, they're interested in Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary.
Good luck with that. No, why would Calgary do that?
Well, that's what Jeremy was saying, that, obviously the connection, Dad
right.
playing
it sounds
Keith
great.
being there for so long. That sounds great that you want Matthew Tkachuk, but in the article it's saying, yeah, well, good luck thinking you're going to trade Tarasenko for Matthew Tkachuk. Like
there's no way.
And what else are you throwing in? Like, I mean, what else? Like, give me doors 2 and 3 as well, right? I mean, there's no way they're trading Tkachuk for Tarasenko straight up, or Tarasenko on a compensatory pick. Like, that's not happening. Like, they're going to have to sweeten the pot big time. It's going to have to be Cracker Barrel sweet tea for sure. It's going to have to be like your teeth feel like they're falling out. It's so sweet. There's no way. So it is interesting where this is going, and it is interesting in this article, and we'll get into this with Elliot Friedman. This is the trend, Willie, in professional sports, and the NBA is responsible for it, whether they want to take credit or not. I don't know if they're proud of it or they aren't. I'm not sure. I haven't seen them on record saying, yeah, this is all because of us. But the NBA, the player movement, is what has started. This is what it is in sports. I mean, players have never had the power that they have today. They are extremely powerful, and you see it. Players are saying, I want out of here. Like, I'm out of here. So
But
you're seeing that
Tarasenko
left
really
and right.
have that much leverage, though? Does he maybe overestimate his value at this point? I do think sometimes the player that is playing that card that you're saying has all kinds of leverage, right? We're finding out, too, that Aaron Rodgers, who you would think has more leverage than almost anybody, isn't able to pull this off, right?
Well, that is only
he can't
because
pull
of
this
one
off.
reason. It's one reason and one reason only. The Packers gave him a monster contract, and if they can't get out of it, they cannot get out of it because it serves them no purpose because of the dead money. I mean, when you're talking about,
Sure.
I don't remember what, $39 million of dead money. Like,
But that's kind of my point. It's like you got to know when you can do it and actually execute it. He
true,
maybe overestimated that.
very true. But I mean, this is the trend, and so when you look at the list, and it's stated in this article by Jeremy Rutherford, and we've talked about a lot of these names already, with Elliott Freeman and others, Jack Eichel, right? I mean, you just go on and on. You know, in Arizona, there's kind of a big deal, big name there that may be on the move. And you just see all up Seth Jones in Columbus, right?
Seth Jones. Oh, yeah.
So you're just seeing all these big, huge names and these players just telling the organizations, like, I don't want to be here. Like, move me somewhere else. I don't want to be here anymore. And we've never seen anything like this. And this has been kind of the trend the last, handful of years. I'd say it's probably, the last 3 years it's really been aggressive in professional sports. Is that fair to say?
That's
last
a good question.
3 years or so?
You're saying
And it just keeps getting amped up every year. Like more and more leagues, it's just like the minute a player is unhappy with either the direction of the organization, the team doctors, the way they're being treated, the way they're not getting surrounded by talent, whatever their reasoning may be, you're just seeing them stand up and say, I want out of here. And that's really been more aggressive every single year. And so add Tarasenko to the list. He doesn't trust the organization, and now he's saying, I want out. And so we'll see where all that goes. So we'll have lots to discuss with Elliott Freeman. We're going to come back and talk to Skip Nipper. He is a guy that knows the history of baseball in this town. He's got a new book that's out. We're going to talk to Skip on the other side here as you listen to Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game. You know what that music means when you hear that? It's baseball time. It's that time of year. So we sit here in early July. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic here with you. Chase has the day off. Let's bring in Skip Nipper, historian of baseball in our fine city. He now joins us, author books as well. Skip, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. You're the perfect guy to ask when you think about knowing the history of baseball in this market. And all of us wondering, going through the layers, the onion that had to keep getting peeled back every time we talked about Greer Stadium and a new stadium and how long it took for it to finally happen. Now we have, this new beautiful ballpark in Germantown and how it's changed that entire area. But it took a long time to get there. But what do you make of?
Go ahead. Sorry.
What do you make of? What it looks like today and how that entire area has completely changed, and it's all because of that ballpark.
Yeah, it was a blighted area. Nobody wanted it. Buildings sat empty or were torn down, and now look what's happened. It's actually the centerpiece for all of North Nashville, in my opinion. And it's great. It's one of the best ballparks I've ever been in for minor league baseball. It's just terrific.
You also know the history of this in this town, and where are we today? You've been following this through the decades, chronicling baseball in this market. Where do you think we are as we sit here in 2021?
I think we are on Major League Baseball's radar because of a number of things. The number of people that attended the NFL draft in the streets of Nashville, the number of people that took advantage of the Stanley Cup playoffs, all the different things that you're seeing, the fireworks displays, bringing attention to Nashville, and Nashville is supporting the opportunity for Major League Baseball to come. I mean, the Grand Prix. I mean, there's so many things that have happened in Nashville. It seems like Major League Baseball is the next piece.
Do you think that how serious do you think this is? Obviously, you've been around the group. We've been around the group. They lose Dombrowski to Philadelphia to be their GM. And, you hear all this stuff, but nobody really knows how serious this is when it comes to the Nashville Stars. Where are you at in, Major League Baseball may want to come here, but there's still a lot of hurdles that have to happen.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to it. The stadium site selection, the investment opportunities for people to come on board. I think that's all part of the ingredients to happen. But we don't know what events are going on behind the scenes, and rightfully so, I think. And that there's going to be some point when there's going to be additional excitement generated, in my opinion. And I'm sure other cities have groups trying to organize also, but I have not seen anything like the Nashville Stars group trying to organize Major League Baseball in Nashville.
Where do you think would be the perfect site?
Well, the perfect site is next to Nissan Stadium. But that's just my opinion. It seems like it would make an awesome footprint for the opportunity to take advantage of the entertainment aspect, not only for baseball but other events. But there are other places. Back when the Sounds were looking for a ballpark, I think there was talk about Hendersonville and Murfreesboro and Franklin, and who knows what's going on, like I said, behind the scenes to make that happen. But I think that's the spot that would make sense to me. I'm just not sure financially it makes sense. I'm not privy to that information.
Yeah. Do you think it's realistic, that site, that area, of that actually happening? Because I agree. I think everybody would agree that is the perfect place to put it. But is it realistic?
Well, I'm not sure that the Silverdale site was realistic either. But so many things happen to make that happen, and I think that's just terrific. It makes all kinds of sense with the growth opportunities, and obviously the East Bank needs to be revitalized. I think that's an additional footprint that would make sense.
What do you think of this market as a whole when it comes to passion for baseball? We're passionate about baseball on the show, but over the years it's a delicate balance. You're trying to figure out, do the masses care? Is it just a group that, a hardcore group that cares? Where do you think, as this market has grown so much in the last 5+ years, where do you think we are in how people feel about the sport of baseball?
I've been around Nashville long. I was born and raised here. This is a baseball town. And the only thing that took away from that was when the Predators and the Titans came to town. There were many attempts to have hockey here before the Predators came. It took a foothold and got some support, and I think it's just terrific. And I think the Titans are terrific also. But I think we can recapture that foundation for baseball, the love, the interest that Nashville has for baseball. And once again, if you think about the way that the population has expanded, not everybody is a Nashvilleian that lives here. People have come from all over, so that you're going to have Yankees fans, you're going to have Braves fans, you're going to have Los Angeles Angels fans that have all moved here, and they're going to look for a baseball team, and I think that's a positive.
Skip Nipper is with us, baseball historian from Nashville, and we're talking a little just baseball here as we look into the crystal ball ahead. Skip, it's so funny. This comes up. As I was saying earlier in the show, I was with my son down at a tournament in Birmingham, and I had a lot of the dads just ask me. We were just kicking this around, the possibility down the road, just like a lot of us do, right, on this show like we're doing right now. What would it take to get a team? When is Major League Baseball going to, make a move? How far away would expansion be? What about teams like the Rays and the A's that are having trouble with the parks? And here's a question we had some fun with is, do you think an American League team or a National League team would do better down the road? Whenever that may be, let's say the stadium was in place, just given the geographic location of Nashville, it's really surrounded by National League markets, right? So is that better for a National League team or an American League team?
Well, we don't know what the future holds. I've heard many opinions that Major League Baseball will shuffle the leagues and the teams at some point when they even up the teams to 32 teams, and the model would be the NHL or the NFL as well. That seems to be the model that works. So who knows that Boston and New York Yankees and Mets and Toronto are in their own division at some point. And Nashville, maybe Atlanta, even St. Louis or Cincinnati have their own division. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, I'm not sure exactly how that would fit. So we can't really rely on today's model for Major League Baseball. Now, obviously, it's changed with interleague play and the DH and so many things happening that I'm not sure Major League Baseball would refrain from shuffling the teams.
That's a good point. I hadn't really considered, but that is a possibility. And the other thing that we know has to shake out, and I think this is part of the reason, Skip, that Dave Dombrowski left Nashville after moving here and ended up being coaxed into the Phillies job, is I think the signals he was being sent was that there probably will not be expansion because of the pandemic. There's a CBA coming up that they probably won't expand for another 5 years or so. So he felt like he could circle back when the time comes if it gets closer to that. So I'll ask you that the CBA, I think we're all kind of on pins and needles because, you hear there's a lot of trouble signs out there. The communication between the union and the owners isn't good. Of course, you being a historian, you know that it's not the first time that they've been there. But
right.
What do you think about the CBA and how maybe that would affect the timetable here?
I think you used the perfect word, Willie, trouble. I think the CBA is trouble for both sides, and until that's ironed out and Tampa and the Oakland situations are resolved, I'm not sure that Major League Baseball will expand, or at least expand immediately. Of course, for Nashville to be a team, and in other cities, there's got to be a stadium built. There's got to be a place for them to play. So I really don't know the dynamics of that, but I'm guessing that Major League Baseball is going to get that CBA ironed out before they go anywhere else. And as far as Dombrowski goes, I think he's still an advisor. I think he's built a home in Franklin. And so I don't think he's left the situation. I think, he's got a 2-year contract, I think I read, with the Phillies. And his service to Nashville is and will be invaluable, I'm sure, going down the road, the connections that he has.
Yeah, I hope he can come back into the fray when the time comes. So I don't know if that means we should root against the Phillies, because if he does really well, of course, me being a Mets fan, right, I am always rooting against the Phillies.
Right.
But,
somebody told me there were 2 teams in New York. I knew the Yankees were there, but I can't remember. Are there 2 teams there?
There are, Skip. There are. And one of them is in first place. One of them is in first place right now. I just would point that out. But Skip, I want to ask you too about the Rays. That's another team that comes up, right? We try to keep, look at Tampa as a sports city right now. They've got the Buccaneers that just won a championship. The Lightning have now won back-to-back championships. The Rays have been a great team, but we know that the venue they play in is not viable. Their lease has, I want to say, 5-6 years left on it. That to me looks like maybe a better avenue for Nashville in the short term is kind of go the route that the Oilers did. If they can't get it done, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, nobody's showing their hand, and I think we don't know, once again, what's going on behind the scenes. I know there's been some talk about Orlando, and in my mind, that would make the perfect sense for Tampa and Orlando to share a team. Tampa and Montreal sharing a team makes no sense. I don't know how you get a fan base to support that. But, Oakland has had some conversations. A friend of mine in Portland told me that Oakland has had some conversations with the Portland group that's trying to do what John Loren and Music City Baseball is trying to do. I don't know. Once again, 5 years down the road when the lease is up, you may see more in a couple of years. I would hope that no matter what, if a team wants to move here, that John's group and the things that he has done to provide a foundation for Major League Baseball team here would be of advantage to someone. And the other thing is, John has included the Negro League Baseball history, the Negro League Baseball Museum in Kansas City as a partner. And it just makes all kinds of sense for the Nashville Stars. We have a foundation here for a Negro League team, and prior to that, with Tom Wilson and all the things that he did, he's actually the father of Negro League Baseball in Nashville. Doesn't get enough attention, I don't think. But I just think it would make all kinds of sense for somebody to pick up John's initiative and run with it and include the things that he's done.
It is a shrewd partnership he's made there with the Negro Leagues for sure. Speaking of history, Skip, you wrote a piece, and all of us. It was funny. Just last week we had a game. One of our pitchers on our 15U team twisted an ankle on the field. Nothing serious, but we had a doctor. One of the dads was a doctor. He came out of the stands and walked over just to make sure he got him an ice pack, just check out, make sure. So we, of course, all of us in the stands were going, here comes Moonlight Graham, right? It's we always have the reference, if you're a baseball fan, if you've seen the movie Field of Dreams, Moonlight Graham, the guy who goes back in time and fulfills a dream of getting up to bat against big leaguers and then has to go back to his role as an everyday doctor. There was a Moonlight Graham story in Nashville you recently wrote about. Tell us about that story.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they think of Moonlight Graham, they see Burt Lancaster. But,
right.
Well, Garth Mann was a player with Nashville, and after he got out of the war in 1944, he was sent right to the Cubs, and he was inserted into a game as a pinch runner, and he scored, but he never batted. So it's a similar story to Moonlight Graham's, but Moonlight Graham didn't score. So I guess Garth Mann has him up on that. He came to Nashville and had a 7-7 record, and then he spent the rest of his career in the minor leagues. So it's just kind of an interesting story that I came across. I thought would be interesting to people to read on my blog, on my website.
Yeah, tell us about that blog, because I know there's some baseball historians that love these kind of things, and you often write about these things. So tell people where they can find that.
Well, it's Baseball in Nashville. Excuse me. It's baseballinnashville.com. I'm a fool for baseball. I don't mind making a fool out of myself when I'm talking or writing about it. And I just try to research something every day. And sometimes it's Negro League history. We were talking about peeling the onion. Man, I go down this rabbit hole as I'm doing research, and then I find something else that's interesting. So I have to make notes and move on. But I would appreciate anybody would like to take a look at baseballinnashville.com.
Outstanding. Skip, I still have the Sulphur-Dell T-shirt that I bought. I think it was Oktoberfest. And this was years before, and it was over, in Germantown. And it was years before the Sounds, actually built the ballpark. And now Germantown looks a lot different. It's a fantastic neighborhood. Not that it wasn't before, but it is really kicking right now. So I still have the T-shirt, and when I wear it, somebody's always asking me about Sulphur-Dell. So great stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us today.
Those are going back on market again soon. So thank you for having me. I really enjoy your show.
All right. Skip Nipper with us, baseballinnashville.com, baseball historian here. Great guy, knows baseball backward and forward. So Skip joins us. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Baseball, Nashville, major leagues, the dream down the road. And then we've got a whole lot more coming as well. We'll talk Nashville SC at 11 a.m. They've got a huge game against Atlanta United. This is the rivalry that we have envisioned for the last few years. It's coming to fruition. They meet again tonight. It's going to be awesome. Drake Hillis will join us. In the meantime, let me tell you about my friends at Loan Pronto, because Loan Pronto continues to pound away at the message. They want to help people out there. They've got a win-win situation for you. They've got a great business proposition because, A, refinancing right now, especially in Nashville, with home values the way they are and interest rates as low as they are, there's a great opportunity for you out there as a homeowner to lower your monthly payment on your mortgage. You can knock it down big time, hundreds of dollars a month, and you can skip a couple of house payments if you refinance through Loan Pronto and the zero-cost refi. But here's the next level part of it, right? This has been a concept that's been out there for a long time, but Loan Pronto has streamlined the process. It's an all-digital process. They're going to get you out of there in 2 weeks. It is going to be a lot of hassle-free. In most cases, you don't even need an appraisal. So find out more about it. Go to loanpronto.com and ask about the zero-cost refi. All the information will be there. And then pick up the phone and call 615-499-5780. That's 615-499-5780. And don't forget, too, speaking of home values being high, home equity loans are available as well. You can take tens of thousands of dollars out, reinvest it in your home, make it even more valuable. Or you can take that money, pay off debts that you need. If you need cash right now for credit card debt or anything else that may be on your plate, it's a great thing to jump on. LoanPronto.com, 615-499-5780, Equal Housing Lender. NMLS 1661781. Subject to lender approval. Not all loans eligible for zero costs.
Sounds will play a double dip today against Gwinnett Yeah, that's the AAA affiliate for the Braves. Game 1 will be on 94.9 at 4:05. That's first pitch. Game 2 set to be on 102.5 the game. So keep that in mind at the conclusion of Game 1. So they'll switch over to ESPN 102.5 the game for Game 2 this evening. Sounds Baseball presented by 312 Pizza Company. So that is the thing. And by the way, when we talk to Drake Hills coming up to start the second hour, you know, I want to know, because I've asked this before, like, you know, what is this going to look like when they move into their new stadium? Well, what really is this market? It feels pretty good, but we haven't really seen it play out when it comes to soccer. The same holds true for baseball. Like, it feels really good today, right? The Sounds have a beautiful ballpark that, you know, just over the fourth weekend, they had great crowd. They had some sellout crowds, great attendance. They've been getting great attendance. And, you know, everything seems to be vibrant and healthy when it comes to the baseball scene in this market. But when you up it to Major League Baseball and you're talking about 81 home games and you're talking about the prices going way up, truly, what are we? You know, what kind of market is this? Like, we know there are lots of baseball fans. I mean, heck, we went to a Braves game this past weekend and ran into 3 families from Nashville at a Braves game. And that's probably, you could probably do that most weekends throughout the summer months, right? You go to a Braves game and you're just going to run into some Nashville families. And so we know there are baseball fans in this market. We know baseball is something that has interest. It's just, the question to me is, but really, what level of interest? Like, how far does that level of interest go? Is it the masses? Is it just a really hardcore group that is comprised of fill-in-the-blank percentage of Nashvillians? I don't know the answer to that. I suspect it's pretty good, Willie, but I really don't know.
You should have been in our discussion dinner a couple of nights ago. You know, some of the parents on our team, just throwing this out there, because you're right. I mean, everybody who loves baseball in this town, I'm sure, has at least been to Atlanta several times, probably been to Cincinnati and or St. Louis at some point, right? If you've lived in Nashville long enough, you've probably taken a trek, either overnight or even up and back in the same day, right? I know I've done it many times. I don't know. I guess I have not done St. Louis same day, right? Go up and come back. We did do it for hockey one time, but that's a little bit longer of a drive. But you know what I mean? Like, that's where you have to go for Major League Baseball. And that's something that all of us who are just hardcore baseball fans dream about, not having to do that, right? Just being able to spontaneously go to the park for a Major League game. You know, the Sounds have done a tremendous job, I think, creating a venue that people want to go see games at, right? They're doing great. But next level would be the big leagues. And a related thing, I do think, is the soccer, right? The soccer, I think, is also a great indicator of where we are as a sports market, because I venture to guess, right, there is a pretty separate audience. There's plenty of crossover, right? We all want to be well-rounded sports fans. Mm-hmm. When you're hosting a sports talk show, I think, and not everybody does this, but I think you owe it to the audience to try to learn as much about as many sports as you can. You shouldn't have to say, well, I'm only a baseball fan or I'm only a football fan, right? We're trying to embrace the soccer as much as we can. And I think it's unbelievable what they're doing. The crowds that they're getting, Darren, I think that they're just setting the table for when that new venue opens. That's going to be a tough ticket day one, don't you think?
Oh, of course, yes.
No doubt, right?
In a new venue, to be a part of history, the first ever game in the new stadium, of course. I mean,
well, I'm talking about like for the whole season, like
yes,
the new venue.
Yes,
they're already getting crowds. You know, what did they get last week? All right, where we're still ramping back up from the pandemic.
What, 20-something thousand?
20-something thousand. So they're already, you know, that's capability of filling the new stadium when it opens, and they're only going to grow from here. And I think they're proving with some of these dynamic moves that they're making how quickly they've become a really competitive team in the league. It just shows if you have a good organization with good leadership and you put a good product out there, you're going to have a fan base here. And I think what's good is our market now is diverse enough, because I worried about this at one time. Like 10, 15 years ago when this talk would come up, I would say, well, we've got the Titans, we've got the Predators. Do we have enough fans to fill all these venues? But I think the answer is yes now.
Well, at the time,
and we continue to grow.
We had the right answer. I think at the time we were not ready. But today, clearly, I mean, I look, growth is one thing, an explosion is another, and we are in the explosion folder. And I don't think any of us, Willie, could have ever seen really what Nashville's turned into. It's turned into a crane city. You go downtown, and all you see are big, large-scale cranes that are building new high-rises left and right. I mean, you just can't even keep up with the growth. I try, and I literally get a headache reading all the new, condominiums or hotels or whatever is going up, and what is this building going to be? So I don't think any of us could have ever seen that. So yeah, we were giving the right answer as much as it pained us back then for a good while to say, look, as much as we want this selfishly, this market isn't ready. It cannot support it that long. I mean, baseball is the longest season in professional sports. I mean, we're talking about 81 home dates in the regular season. That's a lot of butts you have to put in the seats for a long period of time. And it wasn't ready. This market was not ready to support that. But I think, with all the new people that are moving here from all over, and most of them, I'd love to know, like, how many of them are coming from baseball markets? Because we have found out, you know this better than anybody, that Saturn plant and some of the things that were going on in the early years of the Predators, it really helped out hockey in this market, right? Because where were those people getting moved here from? Michigan.
Yeah.
So they grew up with hockey. They grew up with hockey. They were hockey fans. They knew hockey through and through. So we had a lot of transplants who absolutely knew hockey through and through, where Nashvillians are people that have been here like me since it first started, when the first day in Nashville living here was January 1st, 1998. I didn't grow up with hockey. I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky. I went to the Cool Cats games University of Kentucky had. That's because it was Friday and Saturday nights at midnight. It was fun to go have fun. It was turned into a party. But, and I loved it. I did. I loved it. I followed it. But, I wasn't hardcore. I didn't grow up going to National Hockey League games. And so that really helped this market. But I'd love to know, of all the transplants today, all the ones coming today, how many of them are moving here from previous baseball markets? I don't know the answer, but I'd love to know.
I think it's a substantial amount, which has definitely been a game changer. I also think that Nashville I think we got some of this when we talked to Butch Spearden on Friday. So many people are coming to Nashville for a conference or to visit, get away for a weekend. Can you imagine? I think, you go back several years, Nat Hardin, when they built the Music City Center, and this is what we talked to Butch about, they knew, the Predators did, that their attendance was going to benefit from the people coming in just looking for stuff to do downtown. Okay, what's happening downtown? You got a couple concerts, and hey, right next door to where we're staying is a National Hockey League game. Boom, let's jump in on that. That was getting them a big boost in terms of demand for tickets, with people just coming and going. We've also seen what the Titans have been dealing with for a long time. The ticket brokers have a lot of control of their tickets right now, and people are making a weekend of it to come see their football team, right? It's a big issue that the Titans have to try to attack. That I don't think they've found the right formula yet. I still wonder what they'll be doing this year now that it'll be ramped back up and they'll be back to full capacity, and they've got a team that's going to be really exciting to watch. Can they get a bigger percentage of their fans in the seats? But you're always going to be battling the fact that Nashville is a place that people want to visit. Think about a baseball weekend if you had an MLB team. Don't you think it would be just like Atlanta? Where would you rather go for a weekend? This is nothing against Atlanta, right? But where would you rather set up shop and watch a series Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or even just Friday, Saturday, whatever it is. Nashville or Atlanta.
Well,
right?
I mean,
Don't you think people are going to drive in? That's why I asked the American League, National League question. Like, if I don't know what's better, I don't know if you can go wrong. Actually,
I was going to say I'm not sure it would affect really this market.
But you'd have tons of people coming in, especially for weekend series from the get-go, to hang out in the city and watch Major League Baseball here. I think you would have a built-in, not only group of fans that we're talking about here that have to make up your foundation, right? You got to have people that live here that would be going night in and night out. Because there was a time where we were thinking 81 games. I don't know. Do we have enough people living here? Do we have enough baseball fans living here? Is there enough to go around? Now I am much more confident that there is a nucleus that would make up a really good fan base of local fans, and then you add what Nashville has to offer on just getting on the highways and coming in from an hour out, 2 hours out, 3 hours out for a weekend, an easy airport to fly into from Chicago and Atlanta. You would have a lot of different ways to make it work.
Yeah, no doubt. Look, I think the real answer is the National League, as much as it pains me because I'm an American League fan, but I think the real answer is the National League would work better because of, the surrounding markets, between Cincinnati and St. Louis and Atlanta. And, I mean, you could even throw in, possibly Chicago. I mean, Chicago's not afraid to come here. We've seen that with Bears
we've
games.
Seen that, yeah.
We've seen that with Blackhawks games.
Chicago
fans. That's what I said. Bears and Blackhawks fans have proven they're not afraid to come here. So, you even throw in the Cubs. I think it's pretty obvious that the National League would be the true home run here. But, I mean, Yankees and Red Sox and the Indians, of course, would those? You tell me those wouldn't sell out? I'm being, a little tongue-in-cheek there. But Yankees and Red Sox, you tell me those wouldn't be surefire sellout series?
Well, there's
would.
No doubt. That's why
But you can't
go
up and down
forth.
the league like you can the National League and make cases for teams, that would bring in fans. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more lengthier on the National League side than the American League.
Well, okay. Again, we're just dreaming here, right?
Yeah.
Let's say it's a National League team. Would this would be the battle that the Predators had to fight, right? They had to win over the ex-fans of the Red Wings, right? Remember the whole conversion movement they had? Like, you're a Pred Wing. You root for they rooted for the Predators, but when they played the Red Wings, who were in the same division, they rooted for the Red Wings for a long time. But slowly but surely they worked that out. It took a long time. But what would that process be like, right? If you were in the NL East or NL Central, could you win over the Reds fans, the Cardinals fans, the Cubs fans, the Braves fans when you play them? Or would it be better to have an American League team where you don't play those teams as often, so you could be the Nashville X team fan, Stars, whatever it is, and then it would be easier to keep, rooting for your team from afar as well. I don't know.
Honestly, that's
like it would be
point.
Unique.
It really
would be
is.
Unique, right?
Yes.
You'd be the one American League city in this area. It's a National League region when you get down to it, right? What's the closest American League team? It's probably the Indians, right?
Let me think here. Chicago?
I guess Cleveland.
I guess you're right.
Cleveland or Chicago?
They're
about the same.
About the same.
I think it's a little shorter drive to Cleveland, right?
Maybe.
It's about 7-hour drive to Cleveland.
Yeah. That's
probably 8 hours to Chicago.
I mean, it's really
close.
More 7.5 to 8 hours to Cleveland.
Yeah, so it's about the same.
Yeah.
Detroit, similar, I guess.
Yes. It's a little bit longer to Detroit.
So you would have geographically, you would be in a better spot for just the American League.
It's a really good point. I didn't really think about it that way. If you really wanted to have a homegrown feel and have the market rooting for your team, even with transplants, there's no doubt you have a better opportunity, being an American League city. Because you're right.
If you were National League,
because you're probably not going to convert Cubs and Cardinals and Braves
not
fans.
right away. Not right away. You'd have some battles going on, right? You'd have just like the Predators and the Red Wings did.
Like the Reds fans,
right?
You could convert. Like Ryan Porth, I'm sure would switch pretty quick. Like,
oh yeah,
get him. It's been a miserable existence being a Reds fan. Kevin Ingram, we'd have to work on him. I think Porth would switch. He just would switch.
Hey,
Kevin,
one playoff run and I'm over. There you
Elijah
go. Give me a
is-
playoff
no,
run and
no.
I might jump ship.
No, it's not.
I
Mike.
have
You
to say,
jump.
like,
you would jump. Come on.
I have to say, for me, like I grew up watching the Giants and Jets, and when I moved to Nashville, I still followed them because I had nobody else to follow. But I wasn't as hardcore. But you want a team to follow. But when the Titans got here, it didn't take me too long to just take a lot more interest. My interest in those teams I grew up as a child waned. Right, I moved to Florida, and I still rooted for the Giants and Jets. I carried that with me to Nashville. Well, once we had a team, it didn't take me very long to convert. So I do wonder what that would be like, because obviously everybody would have to go through that in their own way. Some are more diehard than others. Now, the one team that I've always been hardcore and stayed with is the Mets. So if it was a National League team, Nashville versus the Mets, I don't know if it would happen overnight, but that would be a little conflict there, especially if the Mets were good.
Well, but that's
which
a big
doesn't
if.
always happen.
That's a big if.
Once every 6 or 7 years.
Is it really 6 or 7?
Maybe 8 or 9.
10 or 11.
10 or 11.
Although DeGrom is ridiculous. Okay, he is that. There's a guy I would show up and pay to watch pitch all year this year. I mean, he's just, what's his ERA? Just over 1? It just went up.
I think it just went over 1. He
just
gave
went
up
over
2
1.
hits, both home runs yesterday. But
ridiculous.
yeah, he's really good.
This just
you know
what he looks. You know what his ERA looks like? Bob Gibson. That's what it looks like.
It'll be interesting to see if he can come anywhere close.
What was Bob
Because
Gibson? 1.06.
You can't give up more. This is the thing. If you give up, he's been in this the last 3 or 4 starts. If you give up 1 run, your ERA goes up.
Yeah.
That's a
right.
hard thing to.
That's a hard
keep up,
standard
right?
to keep. Right. It's a hard standard to keep up with. All right,
Yeah,
we'll come back.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't
we'll
know if
turn
you were
the
going to
page.
finish or not.
No.
Right.
We'll table that for now.
Enough with the Mets. And
Time to
DeGrom.
switch to the soccer. Yeah.
All right, we'll come back. Drake Hills, he covers Nashville SC. They've got a big one tonight, a big match over at Nissan Stadium. We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up. Second hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase next. Second hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5, The Game on this Thursday. Hope everybody's having a good day thus far. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic here with you. Chase is off. Elijah Campbell is manning the board at our Wholesale Link Game Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's been a while since we've chatted with Drake Hills. He covers Nashville SC for the Tennessean, but we always enjoy our chats with him, and we now bring him to the show. Drake, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. Chase is off, but I see him all the time, so I'm excited to talk with you and Willie.
I was going to say, Chase, he has been definitely over there, helping out, engineering these games, and really loving it. Just kind of giving us the feedback of the crowds and the atmosphere. And let's just start there. Big one tonight at Nissan Stadium, and they're so early on, in their MLS life, I guess, the history of them in the MLS. Is it safe to say to this point, is this considered a rivalry game?
Well, I think Atlanta United and Nashville are pitted against each other for obvious reasons, right? You have the boom of Southern soccer in MLS, obviously with Nashville and Atlanta in the past couple of years, and then Charlotte's coming into town and into the league next year. And you're just having a different type of league that, obviously American soccer fans are used to. And, the fact that Nashville's got a couple of wins, that in September last year they pretty much steamrolled Atlanta at Nissan 4-2. And then obviously they stole a win on this past Memorial Day weekend 2-2 behind a couple of late goals at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which was rocking. I was there for that one. And I think it's more of like that brotherly rivalry. There isn't really much bad blood. I think if you want to pin a bad blood rivalry to Nashville SC, it would be FC Cincinnati, and that dates back to the USL days between the supporters. And so I think you need that, though. I think you need that type of competition, and I think it's good for soccer. I think it's good for sports here in the South to be able to have Atlanta United and Nashville SC pretty much duke it out multiple times a year.
Yeah, I was down in Atlanta this past weekend, and it's very close to the True S Park, their facility where they practice and everything, and it's really, really nice. They've done a great job down in that market. It's crazy. Atlanta's always had the stigma of being a bad sports town, but for whatever reason, that does not apply when it comes to their soccer club. They have had, as you know, an incredible attendance and has been well supported down that market, which they haven't done with many other sports down there, but they've certainly done it with soccer.
Yeah, I think it's funny, though, because, for me, I grew up for a good chunk of my life in San Diego, but I'm actually from Georgia. And so I grew up, watching Mike Vick and Falcons and going to Braves games at Turner Field. And so, I haven't been to the new ballpark, but just in terms of fan base, it was always kind of wishy-washy. You had a couple of years that were pretty strong, and then a couple of years that weren't so packed out. Same thing with Atlanta Hawks games. I've been going to Hawks games, watching guys like Joe Johnson in the NBA, Josh Smith, and Zaza Pachulia. And so to see what Atlanta United has done in Major League Soccer, when I'm down there, I'm at the game, and it's, anywhere between having players come off the bus and high-fiving fans. And I'm talking about, 2 months ago now. This isn't before COVID. This isn't anything like that. This is they're having, players come off the bus, high-fiving, giving signing autographs as they walk into the stadium. They've got tons of pregame, really marketing opportunities. And I think that's at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That seats over 70-something thousand people. And so I think Nashville is starting to see how it's claiming its own identity and doing something similar, even though they're still at Nissan Stadium. A lot of people are still getting to know who Soccer Moses is, and getting a chance to kind of feel.
How could you not know him by now? Come on, he's the man.
Well, but it's funny though. I think the summer is a coming out party. You see
right.
The Preds kind of come and go for this season, and obviously the Titans were the Titans earlier in the winter. Closing in on their season, and so this is almost like a full introduction this summer. And the fact that Nashville SC has been at home for the past 3 games. Tonight they go up against Atlanta United for 4, and then next week, they host Chicago Fire. for their fifth and final of this homestand. And, Soccer Moses comes down, in this little crowd, and he can play the guitar, so he's playing the guitar, and he's putting up the sign that says "Let my people go," and just trying to give the club a little bit of an identity, a little bit of spice to a lot of people who are probably coming to Nashville SC games, their first soccer games probably ever, which is basically what this summer should be all about is growing and exposing the game and a good team at that to a new fan base. So they're winning. Nashville SC they've got a couple of draws. They've got a win as well in this home stint, and with Atlanta United, they're going to be without their best player tonight, Joseph Martinez, who has been affected by COVID, so he hasn't been training enough to be a part of the group, and so it looks like Atlanta United will be coming into Nissan Stadium without their best goal scorer. So we'll see what happens.
Seems like it's been good news, bad news for this Nashville SC team. The bad news is they keep getting off to bad starts. The good news is they keep coming back. So they're not quitting. I mean, even getting down 2 goals, which, I used to think forever in soccer, that was like eternity, like you're doomed. And, they've given up 2 quick strikes and still found a way to come up with that draw. I'm sure that drives Gary Smith crazy, but what do you make? And a lot of this has come in extra time, but what do you make of the way they've had bad starts? They're not starting the way they want to, but they're certainly finishing the way they want to.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because actually especially when he gets to 2-0, when he gets to 2-0, that's actually what they like to call the most dangerous scoreline in the game of soccer because the intensity maybe drops off a little bit. Maybe your mentality as the leading team in that game, switches a little bit, and the entire atmosphere takes a different turn. And it all of a sudden it gives this trailing team this situation where they get a goal back and they're back in it, and all of a sudden momentum has changed, and next thing you know, Nashville scores a second. So it's actually a pretty dangerous scoreline. Now 2-0 is a slippery slope. As a matter of fact, I think you won't really put a game away until it gets 3-0. So for Nashville SC, I mean, Gary Smith has said it multiple times. He loves saying it, never say die. And I think the reality is that Nashville SC certainly knows how to play when their back is against the wall, and that might be good if you're thinking about playoffs and thinking about probably the most important games of a season. But going back to last week, I mean, who knows? Maybe that slow start mentality and slow start habit is dead as well, given that CJ Sapong scored just in the first couple of minutes against the Philadelphia Union 1 week ago, one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and that was the second quickest goal in Nashville SC history. Against funny that they're playing at Atlanta United again. Last September, Don Badji scored in the first minute against Atlanta United in that 4-2 win. So maybe that happens. We'll see this national team kind of get on a hot start against Atlanta because the last time they played them, they had to come back, and they took a whole 80 minutes to start the comeback. And next thing you know, they only had 10 minutes to pull out a tie. So this could be the end of a bad habit, and maybe they'll stick around and stay in the top 4 of the Eastern Conference.
You alluded to
that formula.
Yeah, you alluded to Atlanta being without their best player, but it's not just one player. And I want you to, Drake, talk about both of these rosters. We're all watching this play abroad, and there's a lot of things in play this month abroad. And so teams are losing players to that for the time being. How has that affected Nashville SC, and how does that affect Atlanta United tonight? Because from what I can tell, it looks like they've got a lot of guys missing from their roster.
Yeah, it's taken a good chunk of Nashville SC in terms of some of their best players. Let's just start with the reigning defender of the year, Walker Zimmerman. And he's with the U.S. men's national team right now. He's training for the Gold Cup, obviously, which is the North American Premier International Competition, which starts this weekend. He'll be playing with the U.S. And then you've got Anibal Godoy, who's what you like to call the destroyer. He's the one who wins all the battles in the midfield, and he helps really pull the strings with Dax McCarty in there. Anibal Godoy is with Panama. Then you've got Alistair Johnston, who's really burst onto the international scene, young Canadian, a guy who's, arguably one of the best, non-lottery picks of the 2020 MLS Super Draft. He not only won the starting fullback job on the right side, he's, thrived, and now he's been playing with Canada, and he's with the Canadian national team for the Gold Cup. So you've got three starters, and not only three starters, but three players you really depend on being on international duty and could potentially, miss a few games. And if one of those teams, especially the U.S., they get to the final, which is going to be in about a month in Vegas at the Allegiant Stadium. If the U.S. gets to the final, then that means, Nashville could be without, Walker Zimmerman for a good chunk of games. I mean, I'm, just thinking about the schedule. If you go to August 11th, I mean, you've got just in August alone, before August 11th comes, you got 3 games in the first 8 days of August, and they're all on the road. So if you're gonna see those guys be without, I mean, you're gonna have a lot of new players step into those roles. Obviously, Jack Mayer, who was the big MLS Super Draft pick coming out of Indiana back in 2020. Not only has he kind of helped out a bit, he scored his first goal for Nashville against Toronto a couple of weeks ago in that come from behind 3-2 win. A very dramatic result. He's been able to be in the lineup and help out against Montreal a couple of weeks ago, and then you've got right backs. Could it be Sean Nealis? I mean, I'm not. Nashville C traded for another 2020 Super Draft pick out of Georgetown, who they traded from Miami. They got him from Inter Miami. And so there's going to be some young players that maybe, general fans may not necessarily know a whole lot about that might get a lot of playing time this next couple of months. So I think with Nashville, it'll be taking advantage of these final 2 games at home, and then also hoping that some of your players who really haven't seen the most light of day will get in some minutes and be able to perform.
Drake Hills is with us. He is covering Nashville SC. Big match tonight against Atlanta United, the rivalry we've all been envisioning. It's really coming into view, and this is the next chapter tonight. We're looking forward to it. Drake, I don't want to root. You're talking about Team USA with Walker Zimmerman there. I don't want to root against Team USA, but I don't want to miss too many matches here for the squad. But little dilemma there. But that is life, I guess, in MLS. Let me ask you this. Let's just back it up to a sort of a macro question here. I was looking at the standings. 4 wins, only 1 loss, 6 draws. They're 5th right now in the East. Not everybody's played the exact same amount of games. But based on expectations that you had, what they did last year, where are they based on that? How well do you think they've done to this point in the season?
Well, based on my expectations, I think Nashville has actually done better. I thought they were, and obviously, we're talking in early July, right? We haven't even hit the midpoint of the 2021 season. So we've got a good couple of games before we hit that official midpoint next month. And then, of course, this season goes all the way into the first weekend of November. So we've got a long way to go, but in terms of this Nashville C squad, I actually had them in one of those final 2 spots. Obviously in MLS, the top 7 teams get into the MLS Cup playoffs. And so, obviously in the East, that's out of 14 teams, and in the West, that's out of 13 teams. I had Nashville in and around 6 or 7, getting into the playoff, but being in one of those last 2 spots. Right now, they're in 5th, only because Montreal played last night, and they've taken the 4th spot. But if Nashville SC gets a point and they draw with Atlanta tonight, or they win, they're back in the 4th spot. And the importance of the 4th spot is hosting a playoff game, and that's as big as you want, and the big as you can get in terms of MLS Cup playoffs in mid-November. And to think that they could host another playoff game in a non-truncated season, that's success that you're aiming for. So I'm actually, I think they're performing just above where I guessed, and I think if they continue this form, that they'll probably stay there in that 4th or 5th spot.
Drake, you've been really good at explaining some of the maneuvering that a roster does with the uniqueness of soccer, where you have some players that get loaned out. You have players that go play for their national teams from time to time. But Nashville SC just made an acquisition the other day, and I know they're really excited about it. Tell us who's going to be in uniform for the first time tonight.
Right. So Aki Loba is a 23-year-old young center forward from Ivory Coast, but he's been playing soccer in South America the past few years. They just signed him to a designated player deal, and obviously, when you start talking about DPs, for as they like to call them, that means it's a big deal, right? I mean, that means a guy who obviously has a salary that exceeds that salary budget charge of $612,500. Something that really means that he's going to be one of your best players. You're expecting him to be one of the top players that you go to, and you're only allowed to have 3 DPs on your roster. So if you know about Hani Mukhtar already, or you know about Jandro Cadiz already, then Aki Loba is joining that group and to be the 3rd DP on the roster. He's coming from Mexico, and he's coming from a team called CF Monterrey, which is one of the best teams, not only in Mexico, but one of the best teams in the region, in North America. That includes MLS and, some of the other countries, out here in the region. And they're one of the best teams. And unfortunately, I guess for Aki, he didn't really make his mark down there. But Nashville's been on, been looking at him for the past 18 months. And so this is really something that has been boiling since before Nashville SC even kicked the ball in Major League Soccer. So he could very well be, he's in Nashville, I can say that. But in terms of playing tonight, not quite sure if he's going to be ready for that. But I will say he's in Nashville. He's been with the team, and he's in market. And so if you're not going to see him tonight against Atlanta United, I definitely think you'll be seeing him shortly.
It's interesting. I looked at their website. It said they would introduce him, but it does not say for sure that he would be in uniform tonight. What position does he play, just for people that would be on the lookout for him, whether he plays tonight or not? Where do you see him fitting in the lineup? What spot?
Yeah, well, he'll certainly be the player that's closest to the goal. Right? He's going to be a center forward, and he has the ability to play on the wing as well. So he could be along that sideline and being able to get on the ball and to dribble past a couple of players. But he's going to be in that attacking side of the game and for Nashville. And as I said earlier, it's kind of a big deal, right? And he's required a club record transfer fee. They paid $6.8 million for him to send to Monterrey in order to get his signature. So they have bigger expectations for Aki Loba. So that's to say the least.
Well, let's ask this, Drake, as we let you go. You were mentioning Soccer Moses and the support groups that started building their thing, when the games were over across the way in the baseball stadium when it was called First Tennessee Park, when they were in the USL. The fandom, it's ramping back up since the pandemic we're sort of maneuvering out of that. What kind of crowd are we expecting tonight, especially with Atlanta in town? And we know some of their fans will probably travel over as well. What kind of numbers are we looking at?
Yeah, that's a good point, because, you gotta look at some of the supporters groups like La Brigada de Oro, right, as a supporters group that really is rooted in Latin culture. And then you've got the roadies who have been around for so long in the soccer world here in Nashville, and you've got others as well, the Heaters, the Assembly, and now you've got the Mixtape, which is a supporters group that is centered around Black culture here in the Music City in Middle Tennessee. And you're seeing that growth and going up against teams like the Philadelphia Union, where an attendance is just in the high, 22,000 range at Nissan Stadium. The announced attendance was 21,822. So I think for Atlanta United, again, it is a Thursday match. It's not on the weekend, but I also think it is, as we talked about earlier, kind of like your big brother, so to speak, a team that's won MLS Cup, that is culturally one of the more cool kids of the league. And, in terms of this matchup, you're no longer feeling like you're inferior to a team that you've been able to compete with. And so it's an attractive matchup, and I think you could very well see a big contingent at Nissan Stadium just because of the matchup and what it means to Nashville and also what it means to Atlanta as well. So we could see a big contingent out there.
I think it's going to be fun to watch this continue to evolve because I think it's going to be something special. Drake, great stuff as always. We always appreciate your time. Enjoy the game tonight, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Yeah, I hope to see you two at Nissan Stadium soon anyway.
Oh, man, I got to get over there. I was thinking I might have to get over there tonight. I might have to just go over and watch this game. It's going to be
I was
good
literally
stuff.
thinking about that as we were talking to Drake. I'm like, is tonight? I think we need to maybe go to Nissan.
Might be time to get on over there. I got no excuses. All right, that's Drake Hills. Darren, I know you got a word before we head to the break, and we're going to talk to an old friend. Joe Dubin is coming up with us just around the corner to talk about his new venture.
We are. We are going to do that here coming up at the bottom of the hour. But, yes, I do want to talk to you about what's going on this weekend. And there is something big going on that it's not loading up for me there, Elijah. So, you know what? Let's go to the break and come back. We will have Joe Dubin, and we'll continue on here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase next. Problem solved. Darren here to talk about DraftKings. Yeah, Conor McGregor and Poirier. Part 3 is all set. UFC 264 this weekend on DraftKings Sportsbook. The official sports betting partner of the UFC has a knockout offer for this weekend's fight. DraftKings is offering 264-1 odds on a knockout in the first round during Saturday's main event. If the rubber match ends in a first-round knockout, you walk away with cash. Now, this is all you have to do is just pick the main event fighter you think will win by a first-round knockout, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 264-1 odds on that fighter. That's right. Bet $1 on either Conor McGregor or Poirier to win by a first-round knockout, and if they do, and if it happens, you win $264. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to put your money where your mouth is, and that's with DraftKings Sportsbook. Don't worry, if MMA isn't for you, they've got great odds and promotions on basketball, hockey, and so much more. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. All you have to do, download that top-rated app right now. Use that promo code 1025GAME, and when you sign up, turn $1 into $264 when you bet on the main event fighter to win by a first-round knockout. Place your bet. Watch the fist fly this weekend. That code again you need to use, 1025GAME. Turn $1 of yours into $264, and that's only at DraftKings Sportsbook. You must be 21 years of age or older, Tennessee only. New customers only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. Don't forget to go to theGameNashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. When you see that, click on it. The deals happening right now include a $50 Bad Axe Throwing Nashville gift card for only $25. Buy one, get one free, Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon. Go get yours now while supplies last. And that's at theGameNashville.com. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic with you. Chase is off today, and we spoke with Skip Nipper in the first hour of the program, who is a Nashville baseball historian. Another historian of this market is on the line with us, Joe Dubin. Big Joe on the go, and it's appropriate. He's on the go. A lot of you have been familiar. Yeah, well, good morning. We got about 30 more minutes, Joe, until we can say good afternoon. Yeah, people have seen your smiling face on Nashville television airwaves for a long time. They've heard your voice on these radio waves and on radio here in town, but you've kind of got a new venture that's popped up. It doesn't look like people are going to find you on Channel 4 anymore, but they are going to still be able to find your work, so tell us about it.
So I'm no longer at Channel 4. I've got a great opportunity, and I'm now at Main Street Media, Main Street Nashville. You go to the website, mainstreetmediatn.com, and there's 14 newspapers all around Middle Tennessee, and they're everywhere, and they cover communities and local stories. And you guys know, and I've known you guys for years, how important neighborhoods and hyper-local things are. I mean, hell, Darren, I know more about your son's travel ball team than I do the Titans, which is a good thing. I mean, there's no problem with that because I love that stuff. So I love high schools and I love community, and it's an opportunity to not only – I've been writing for 2 years, and now we're going to take the Big Joe segments and put them on the Internet. People aren't watching really TV all the time. Now you're busy. You got Netflix, you got games, so now you just go to your Facebook or go to the web and see these segments and see the community stuff, and it resonates with people. And the reason I got started about roughly 2 years ago at a basketball game, and a friend of mine pointed – it was a DCA basketball game, and he pointed at a guy and said, "Hey, you know that guy on press row?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know who that is." He's like, "Well, he works for the Main Street Nashville paper, and it comes out once a week, and you ought to look into it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm curious to see what they do." And I got the paper. It was just loaded with high school and community stuff, and like soccer and basketball and football and baseball. I mean, everything you could imagine. And I'm like, I'd like this. So I've been writing on my blog for about 8 years or so. So I sent the owner a sample of what I'm writing. I say, "Hey, I don't want any money. Just add this to your website. It's local stuff." And then started doing that. One thing led to another. We started talking about 2 months ago, and to make a long story short, here we are. And I'll give you another example. Willie, I saw your son, University School, play DCA in baseball, right?
Yeah.
There's the reporter taking pictures, families out there. And I'm thinking, if Willie Daunic's son goes 4 for 5, I think he got 2 hits in that game, by the way, you want that article, right? It's going to be in the paper somewhere, but it's not. But now you have a chance to go out and you can cut that article out and say, "Look, this is when my son, had 4 hits or whoever you played," and that stuff's tangible. And I hope it makes sense. It's tangible. You got it, and you see it. Darren, on your son, when they advance to the state tournament or something, there's a paper going to cover that and see that. You cut it out, and you got that. You can't cut Facebook out and copy and paste. And here, Grandma, here's a screenshot of what my son did today. I mean, it doesn't resonate the same way. So I see all that, and they're in every community around. So I was like, you know what? This is good for me. And as we've known, I'm a big high school football guy. I'd rather go see Fairview play Cheatham County and Mount Juliet and Hendersonville than I would a Titans game. That's just me, and because I just love the purity of the high school football, and that's all being covered, and that's all on the paper, and you see that, and you can tell those stories. So it was a win-win for me to be able to get out and tell those stories because, when I was doing sports at Channel 4, my time kept getting cut. I'd have 4 minutes, then 2 minutes, and, "Oh, this story went long. We got to cut you down to a minute." I'm like, what am I? I'm stealing money here. What am I doing? And a prime example is the Merrill Hyde girls soccer team made it to the state tournament. Great story, great coaches, great girl, everything. I was like, I like this story, but I can't tell this story in a minute at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. So when I transitioned to the morning show at Channel 4, I felt like we didn't do enough of the community. I really felt like we let a lot of stories pass us by because we weren't in the community a lot. And so this allowed me to get into the community, and we had a lot of fun. We did 4 segments with the girls on the morning show, and that's what it's about. So that's what I'm taking over to Main Street, and I couldn't be happier.
Joe, if people didn't realize your passion for youth sports or high school sports in this market, it certainly resonates in listening to you talk right there. I mean, it comes through the radio. It's very clear. I mean, heck, in all seriousness, I mean, it was our first tournament of the spring was at Mount Juliet Park, and it was your story on Channel 4 that I went, holy crap. I mean, right after that tournament is when we had the massive flooding, and that park flooded out, and we were just there playing a weekend tournament, and I was like, holy cow. And then it happened, in our city, in Smyrna, at Volunteer Park. It was basically underwater. It had turned into a lake, and it was your stories that, that first brought the attention to it. And everybody knows your passion for that. Where did that come from? Where, you have 2 kids of your own, but where did the passion for that level of sports come through you, resonate through you?
Well, I mean, here we go. I'm going to get on my stand again. I mean, I had the most amazing time playing football in McGavick High School. I mean, I had the most amazing time, amazing friends, 40 or 50 I still talk to today, and that doesn't happen everywhere. You go into college and you play sports, and it's all great and fine, but, that's where you grow up. I mean, and so I would go there, and it made my mother so happy to see her in the stands, and we had great teams in McGavick, and I know people are like, oh, God, high school football. But you know what? You should remember those days, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball, just the purity of the bus ride across town, getting your butt handed to you and then driving back across there, winning big games. We had a game one time in Dixon County. We lost in the last 10 seconds. There was 15,000 people there. As I'm going to the bus, the Dixon County fans are trying to fight us. I mean, and I wrote about that. But it's funny looking back now. But those are all great memories. So I want every boy and girl to experience that in high school, and they deserve coverage. I mean, they deserve front page every day. I get all that. But I just saw how much fun it was and the friendships you've taken throughout the years and you build on. And now you go out and you talk to the coaches that you played against and that you've known forever, and they're coaching basketball, baseball, and football. And it's just there, and I think it's something, as long as we're still grounded to that. Mike Keith and I had a great talk a couple years ago because he was doing public address at BGA football games. I'm like, I mean, I said, I get my love for high school football, but why you? He's like, it's just pure, and you're grounded to it. And you go out there and you hear the band and you smell the food. I never want to lose that. I'm like, man, that is a perfect way to put it. So I think we all should celebrate these kids and enjoy them. And then, it's okay to lose. It's great to win, and celebrate them overall. And so that's where my passion for high school sports comes through.
You know this just like we do, and it's amazing, especially if you have kids on the scene, because I feel like just when you think you know where everybody is, then something, come across the team, and you're like, holy cow, I had no idea that person was, coaching a team here in town. But this market is just littered with former, college players, former professional players that are coaching, baseball or pick a sport. I mean, the reason I bring this up is because, Willie, I don't even know if you know this, but a team that we just recently played in a tournament, they're having tryouts, and I didn't realize that Ro Coleman was a part of their organization in the Nashville Stars. I had no idea. And he's a part of it. Gerard Parker, DJ Merriweather. I mean, names that you know, and this is all over town. Like, you're just seeing all these kids that are guys that used to play in this market, went on to, some had, a cup of coffee in the pros or played in the pros for a good while, or was, or were in the minors for a good while, that are helping our youth today at whatever level, whether it's, Mike's son's age or whether it's 14, 15, 17, more Mahoney's age, a little bit older. But that's another cool aspect, too, of all these names that we may have watched and covered are now coaching our kids.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Darren. I mean, you see it all the time. These high school games, there'll be a coach in there that played in college like, hey, what are you doing here? I love the game. I love the kids, and it's everywhere. I can't speak for other cities around the country, but I see it here, and it's all over. We would do a thing on TV at this Football Friday, go out and get the band involved, the cheerleaders and parents would come out, and you see the passion for all these things around. It's never going away, despite what people might say, nobody cares about that. We could say that about anything. Nobody cares. But people care in large numbers, and, you dedicate time to them, and you give them the time, and they'll give it back to you. with the love and adoration, and you become a friendship. I firmly remember. I mean, we could go back. Sonny Gray at Smyrna High School, seeing him at high school pitching baseball and, at football. And like, this guy's going to be a big star. You see that guy. You see Golden Tate at John Paul. You're like, good Lord, this guy is something else. And, John Henderson at Pearl Cone. I mean, you see these kids, and you grow up and you watch them, and you love their success. You feel like you're a part of it with them. And so I hope we never lose that. And so I've got the opportunity now to tell stories, to go out and see these people and get out in the community and be involved, whether it's a sports story or not. Just something kind of cool that goes on that people need to know about, and know that there is a lot of positivity out there. We just got to see it and find it and search it out. And there it is. Like my son a couple years ago had this thing at school. It's like he had to count all the red cars like one afternoon. He got like 21 red cars, and it dawned on me he was looking for red cars, right? And I'm thinking, why don't we just look for the positive? I mean, I can look at negative all day long. It takes as much energy to do both. But why not look for the positive things and great stories and people that are coming up in the world? My final story I did at Channel 4 was of a one-legged kickboxing fitness instructor. I mean, it was amazing. And so a great story to be told. They're all out there. We just got to find them. And I hear you guys on the radio all the time talking about this, positive and good things. And so it's out there, and people want to see it, and people want to hear it. Despite what consultants tell you in the media world, nobody's ever come up to me and said, you know what, if you could do more bad news, I'd appreciate it. Nobody's ever said that. It's always about, hey, I love this story. I love that story, things that are going on. Skip Nipper, perfect example. If you don't know who Skip Nipper is, you need to find out who he is. I read his stuff every single day about the history of baseball in Nashville, and it's fascinating. And I'm not even a big baseball fan, but I find Skip and his history fascinating about our city. We all should be a part of that.
Joe, you brought up, before I pass it to Willie. Willie knows this. When Sonny Gray was at Smyrna High School, and he was a Smyrna Bulldog, winning state titles in football and baseball, and or he was an incredible pitcher. I don't remember if they actually won the state in baseball, but I know he won 2 titles in football. At a previous stop, we did a show there one Friday night before one of their games, and during the commercial breaks, we were throwing football in the parking lot with Sonny Gray. I mean, that's just something we'll never, ever forget. Now he's a big league pitcher in Cincinnati for the Reds and has had an unbelievable career, but when he was in high school, we're throwing football with him in the parking lot.
Funny story real quick about Sonny Gray is that they went out to scout him his sophomore year. From what I've been told, like Vandy was there in Lipscomb and Trevecca and a bunch of schools were there. After 2 pitches, and somebody told me it was the Lipscomb coach. I'm not sure, but they said it was Lipscomb. After 2 pitches, the guy picks up his stuff and is leaving. And they said, hey, where are you going? And he's like, Sonny Gray ain't coming here, and just left and was gone. So you see that stuff and hear those stories, and you just love it. It's like the Golden Tate thing, when he scored 3 touchdowns in the final minute. I forget who they were playing back in 2006. And I'm watching the highlights thinking, what is going on? This guy is amazing. So you see these kids, man, and you grow up, and you talk about Sonny Gray at the Reds. We're so happy for his success because we saw him, and we saw what he did. And I just love that. And it all starts in the community with the high school, with those coaches.
It's a great point. Big Joe on the go with us. Joe Dubin, formerly with Channel 4. He has moved on. And he is, as you're hearing this, if you're not hearing the passion here, he's a perfect fit for this Main Street Nashville. And Joe, as I've been scrolling the website, I've been looking at some of the stories. It's blowing me away in the sports section here because it's exactly what you're saying. And Joe, you go back. First of all, before we go any further, tell people where to follow yourself and Main Street Nashville, because I'm guaranteeing you there's going to be some people listening out there that want to make sure they're tuned in and they're connected to this site.
Well, just go to Facebook is like the foundation for a lot of things. We go there and see that. So right. Main Street Nashville on Facebook, but MainStreetMediaTN.com, you can link to all the newspapers around there in Portland and Hendersonville. They're in Mount Juliet. They're everywhere. I mean, they're in the Murfreesboro, Fairview, Cheatham County, Clarksville. I mean, it's everywhere you can see the paper. It's all laid out for you right there. And follow the socials. New content comes out every day. The Main Street Nashville has an amazing app that you could just scroll through with your finger. It looks like you're reading the paper. So that's going really well, too. But their dedication to local and community, for years we were told that, print is dead. Well, a certain way that people are doing print is dead. That way is dead.
the way, and I took a deep dive in this company. I looked at it, I'm like, this is a massive success. I mean, this is working. And you see the community stories, and you see the local stories, and it works. So you just go to the website, but Facebook page, there's a lot of information is laid out there, Main Street Nashville, and that'll kind of jettison to everything else that goes on there, and you can see it for yourself.
I love it. I love it. Joe, you go back far enough. You were talking about your roots in Nashville. So you can remember the time where it was sort of a critical point. We knew we were going to become a major league city, sports-wise, right? The Titans were coming. It was the Oilers at the time. We knew the Predators were coming. So this is late 90s, and there was a lot of outcry from a lot of the sports market at the time saying, well, let's make sure we preserve the high school coverage. And I think there was a pretty concerted effort for a while, but I think as, the Titans have grown, in age, right? We got like a generation now of a major league sports town. And now we have Major League Soccer, and there's other things on our minds. And it does kind of get overshadowed some, right, as the media has evolved. So this is such an essential thing that you're talking about right now because, just for all of us to have all these fragmented things, right? There's podcasts over here, there's websites over here, there's Facebook over here, just to make sure you're connected to your audience. If you have a passion for this, as you're talking about, just making sure people are tuned in, this is such a great hub for all of that. I love the concept there.
It is, and Willie, I know you appreciate that too because you see things like that are going on. Like, I wonder what's happening over. I heard there's some good things about a player up in Portland or a story that's happening in Murfreesboro.
I'll give you one right now. I'm looking at it right now on Main Street, Nashville, and this is you mentioned University School where my son plays. We had one of our great upsets this year. We didn't have a great team, but we pulled an upset against Friendship Christian, and they've got this superstar player named Camden Hayslip, who's on his way to Alabama, but he's possibly going to be an early pick in the draft coming up this week. So, when you play a guy like that at the game, it's like, wow, look at this kid. This kid is unbelievable. And, back in the day, Joe, right, in the 90s, pre-Major League City, this probably would have been a pretty big story in the Tennessean or the Nashville banner, right? It's getting kind of overshadowed right now, but it's a special athlete.
Yeah, and it's exactly right. That's what makes it work. You see these kids, and you learn about them. And, there are some amazing prep athletes we got in our city, and all too often we don't get to see or hear about them. And then now you get the whole – that was a whole front page they had. Like, that was in the Wilson Post. Tommy Bryan wrote that, who's been around forever. So you got these writers who know Nashville, know Middle Tennessee. They put stories together. It's in print. You can see it on the website. So it all works. And I'm thinking, I need to be part of this and just tell these stories and how wonderful it is. And so you could go back. And that Hayslip story, prime example. This is a guy that could go early in the draft, and he's going to Alabama to play baseball. But there are also other stories that happen that go on that you get to know and see and read about. And I go back again to the community thing. I had a thing with when my mother passed away, my brother handed me an envelope and said, I found this in Mom's Foot Locker. And I'm like, what is this? And I open it up. She had cut out every single article I'd ever been in, no matter if Tennessee or whatever it was, every single article. And I've got that laying in my office. So you know how important that is now that we all have kids to see that. We all like to see our kids' name in print, and now it's still going on. And so that was another thing that drew me to this was the fact that you still can see it in print. It's still there. It's tangible in your hands. You read about good stories in the community, and I'm just over the moon excited to be a part of it.
So, Joe, will you be focusing on sports? Because as you have a passion for sports, but what you've done in the past, like you said, you're looking for great community stories, life stories. So what's your angle here? Is it more towards sports, or is it going to be pretty much everything?
Pretty much everything. There'll be stories we'll go. We'll hang out with different teams and coaches and do stories that way. But it's an overall community thing. If there's something that's great that's happening in the community that will be a part of a fun story, or a new company that moved in, to say Mount Juliet or Hendersonville that, hey, they're doing this, go out and be a part of that. Like, there's a Ninja Warrior gym in Murfreesboro, and they've had like 15 people from that gym appear on American Ninja Warrior. Those are cool stories around that you find out and you do, and you just go out and do that stuff. So it's kind of a potpourri of everything, and all the other writers let them know, give them tips about stories that go on, and likewise. So it'll be a kind of a broad brush of a lot of things that are happening in Middle Tennessee.
I feel like I know the Murfreesboro area really well, and it says a lot that I don't know about that place. That means I've never visited, and they would never have me. So that's,
now you know. See,
yeah.
there you go. That's why I'm here.
But they wouldn't let me in, Joe. That's the problem. So I have no chance of ever being on that show.
They let me in, and I was able to get off. They have the ring. You get like 8 rings. You go flying down.
Oh,
I was
my
able to do
gosh.
2 of them.
Oh, you did too.
So excited.
Hey, we know you got to move along. Hey, we're happy to get the word out for you. This will not be the last time we talk to you about this stuff. Best of luck moving forward, and thanks for doing this.
Appreciate it, brothers. I think the world of you, too. Thank you.
We feel the same way. Joe Dubin, there you go. New venture for him, Main Street Media. And you know what? There is a thirst for local, without a doubt. It's why we do what we do here on the radio. And now Joe is going to do it in print and online, and you can find his work. We'll come back, wrap up the second hour next. Good stuff from Joe Dubin. Big Joe on the go. I have Trevor Maddich. Talk a little NIL and all things college with Trevor as the SEC Media Days is just around the corner. We'll get into some college stuff with Trevor to begin the third hour. Don't forget Elliot Friedman coming up in the final hour of the program. Boy, do we have a lot to discuss with him. The lists need to be submitted in 9 days for the expansion draft. Tampa Bay Lightning get it done. Back-to-back champs. First time in the last 16 years. So the second team to do that, second organization to do that. Pittsburgh Penguins have done it as well. So Vasilevsky pitches the shutout. Maroon wins his third straight cup. Pretty impressive. And when you look at this Tampa team, gosh, unfortunately, it doesn't look like they're going. Things are, what they've been doing. They're in a window to keep winning. I mean, I saw them holding up the three fingers last night. There's no doubt they're going to go for the three-peat. But whether they can do it or not, that's an incredible feat to pull off. But, man, are they loaded, and then probably their roster, the way it's constructed, will certainly put them in the position to do it.
I think that's true. I think the key is going to be now, just like every championship team, the tough salary cap moves that have to be made, right? They benefited, the Lightning did, because they were able to work Kucherov in for free, basically. Yep. They didn't count his salary the whole year because he missed the entire regular season. But they were that good that they could finish where they did without his services while he, rehabbed from a really bad injury he suffered in the playoffs last year. So they got to jam his salary back into the cap. They might have to have a few casualties as a result. And they're just going to have to rely that the depth is coming up. But as long as you have Point, Hedman, Kucherov, Stamkos, Vasilevsky, you have the foundation where you just, you might lose that, one or two of those guys off the next tier. Tyler Johnson, remember they waived last year. They ended up being able to keep him. They found a way to do it. He certainly is not a superstar, but he's a great player. On a great team. So that'll be the question for them is how well can they keep those guys intact with the cap management. But that's a good problem to have.
Well, just to your point, you look at Montreal, it looks, their task looks a little bit tougher because I was looking at their pending UFAs. Tatar is a UFA. Eric Stahl is a UFA. Deneau is a UFA. Armia is a UFA. Corey Perry is a UFA. You see? I mean, that's a lot of meat right there.
They got some interesting decisions to make for sure because they have to sort of determine, are we on the way up or was this just everything coming together? I mean, if you look at it, they do have some really good young pieces like Suzuki, and Caulfield really was awesome in what he provided. But they've got a lot of veterans on that team, right? It is not a super young, up-and-coming group, right? It was a great blend. Shea Weber and Corey Perry and Eric Stahl, those guys have got a lot of miles, right? And it was great to see them have a great run like that, especially Shea Weber, right? Carey Price is getting a little long in the tooth, right? And those are the tricky decisions that Marc Bergevin's got to make. It'll be a very interesting offseason there.
No doubt about it. We'll come back. Trevor Maddich to begin the third hour of the DDC. That's next. Third hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5. The Game here on this Thursday afternoon. Darren McFarland, Willie Daunic with you. Chase is off today. Elijah Campbell back at our Wholesale Link Game Studios, powered by RumbleOn.com. Friend of the show, Trevor Maddich, can be heard Tuesdays on Stillman and Company. Does great work on ESPN, talking all things college football. He now joins us. Trevor, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Darren. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Hope your summer's going well.
Yes, it is. It is absolutely going fantastic. I'm just hoping that COVID stays in a box and diminishes, and as long as that happens, that it'll be a stellar summer.
Amen to that. Amen to that for sure. And by the way, as a guy who I know you love music, it's nice to see our concerts coming back. You know, that's going to be help add to the summer flavor. All these shows that are being announced, and I know have already happened, so that's really cool to see.
Yeah, and I just actually went and saw Anthony Smith perform, just him and his guitar. He's one of the greatest songwriters in Nashville. He is phenomenal, and if you don't know him, you know a lot of his music, big hits for people like George Strait and many others. So I just got to see him in a small venue and plenty of social distance from where I was sitting. And it was just unbelievable. I'm so excited for that to come back on a larger scale.
Oh, great stuff. Great stuff as always. I guess you guys at ESPN could probably do a show just dedicated to the portal, right? It's hard to keep up with it.
Yeah, but would it be a comedy or would it be a tragedy or would it be a horror film? What would it be?
I don't know. I guess that's up for the viewers to decide. That's a good point, though. I mean, I don't know. You know how this works. There's going to be carnage, right? There's going to be kids that go into the portal and they're just going to get left behind and they're going, uh-oh, now what do I do?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think the second generation coming up now behind this scenario where you don't have to sit out a year anymore. It used to be you had to sit out a year if you transferred before you were eligible to play.
Did we lose Trevor?
This is the first year that you can transfer. No, I'm still here. Can you hear me, Darren?
Yeah, we got you.
Hello? Oh, okay, I got you. Yeah, this is the first year that you can transfer without having to sit out. And I think a lot of guys that are already in the portal right now thinking the grass is greener on the other side are going to find out that there are no scholarships available for them. So rather than go out and be heavily recruited again and all that, a lot of these guys, if not most, won't have a place to play, at least not on scholarship. And I think the next generation coming up below them will look at that and say, okay, I need to maximize my opportunity where I am. And a big problem is that with COVID and with the super seniors and people getting an extra year, and that's just not super seniors, it's super freshmen. So it'll take a while to clear this out. You're going to have fewer opportunities for freshmen coming into scholarship opportunities because there's going to be a whole bunch of guys that are going to come back and take those scholarships that would have gone to incoming freshmen. And so the transfer portal is going to be caught up in that problem too.
What a mess it could create. We're all in that same age bracket, and so you remember the Magic 8 Ball, right? You shake it up and you see what it's going to tell you about whatever you're asking it. It does seem like all signs are pointing towards, I guess it would say outlook very good, that we are going to see a 12-team college football playoffs. Your early thoughts on possibly if that is where everything is headed, and it may be sooner rather than later, 12 teams in a playoff system, what do you think?
Well, I would have preferred 8 teams, but 12 is vastly better than 4. I think that the 4-team playoff did a lot of damage to college football. It diminished the value of conference championship races because, as we've seen in the Pac-12 and in the Big 12 this last year, if the front runners lose a game or two early, they're out of the national conversation, and their conference championship race becomes a regional sideshow of limited national interest, and that's not good for college football. It's also not good for college football that the natural conversation nationally as the season goes on is on the teams that are most likely to make the playoff. And as September gets into October, gets into the beginning of November, conversation when a lot of great things are happening other places, and there's not as much room for them to get publicity for it. And I think that's bad with the 14 playoff. I think 12 opens things up in a lot of ways that reduces some of the damage to conference championship races, and it opens up the conversation to a lot more teams to create a lot more interest for a lot longer into the season for more fan bases.
I want to get your thoughts on this, Trevor, along those lines. Willie and I were discussing this yesterday, and I threw this out there because we're already seeing this in the bowls that aren't included, right? Just bowls that are not involving playoffs, that you see players that say, I'm bouncing, I'm done. A week of the season, or maybe even the final 2 weeks, but typically that final week of the NFL season, you see a lot of starters sitting down, gearing up for the playoffs because they're trying to rest them, they're trying to get them as healthy as possible. And what I brought up and proposed to Willie is, aren't we going to see that if there's a 12-team playoff, especially in a power conference like the SEC, because there's going to be a championship game where there's no drama. It's either both teams are in, no matter what happens, or the one team, if they lose, it doesn't matter. They're going to be in the 12-team playoff. And aren't we going to see those coaches say, this guy's got a nagging hamstring injury. This guy's shoulder's been bothering him. This guy, and go down the list, and the next thing you know, they're sitting 7, 8 starters because they're gearing up for the playoffs. They're not worried about the conference championship game, and I think it's really going to hurt those championship games along, Trevor, with the fan base that's saying, you know what, I'm going to save my money for the playoff run. I don't need to go to Atlanta. This is meaningless for my team. I'll just save up my money for this road to hopefully a national championship, and we'll just start gearing up for that. I don't need to go to Atlanta and go to Mercedes Stadium to see them play in a conference championship game that means nothing. What do you make of that?
I think you make some great points about some of the unintended consequences and unforeseen consequences, really, that will pop up as this occurs. I think the people sitting out players in conference championship games, I think I see that a little bit differently because right now the way the proposal is being discussed, they are talking about having the top 4 ranked conference champions all get automatic berths, but they all get a bye in the first round of the playoffs. And if that happens, then it still makes those conference championships really valuable because of the bye. So, for example, if you've got Alabama at number 2 playing Georgia at number 4 in the SEC championship game, both of those teams are going to make the 12-team field regardless of who wins that championship game, right? But the winner will get a bye. The loser will have to play. So the winner will have to win 3 games to win the championship. The loser will have to win 4 games to win the championship. So that's important. And then when you get beyond the top 4 highest ranked conference champions, then you've got other championship games where you've got most of those. The loser will probably have no guarantee of making the playoff, and certainly they're discussing having the first round of the playoffs be at home field. Now, we'll see how that works out. We're still a ways away from the final details. But if you win your conference championship game, you've got a much better chance of having a home field playoff game than if you lose it. So I don't know that that's as big a deal. But I agree with you also about the fans. You're adding another round, and fans aren't just going to pick up and go to every round of these playoffs. They just won't be able to afford to do it. And I think what you may find is the home games, if it turns out that way, will help because fans will just cross the street to go to the game. But then I think you'll find the next rounds will end up being a bit more like we see with the Super Bowl, where the whole thing is sold out with corporate interests. And, there's some room for fans, but not a whole lot. So these are all things that will shake out as time goes on. But one thing that I think is really smart about what you and Willie were talking about is that there are going to be a whole bunch of unintended consequences. Some of them people aren't going to like. And so we'll see how it all plays out.
Trevor Maddich is with us, ESPN college football analyst. Trevor, I'm curious. I know one of your traditions has been to drive around and get face-to-face time with college coaches, college programs, see the facilities firsthand. And I know, of course, the last year or two has probably put a big damper on that. But is that back on? Are you going to be able to do that some this summer?
No, that'll be next year. I think will be the first chance we'll really have a chance, depending on COVID. What happened was I was on the road last year, early, in February to get some things started, and then COVID hit everything and shut it down. And so this year, I didn't want to put schools in a position of me dropping by campus, knowing that I've also dropped by 30 other campuses, right? And I didn't want to put them in that position from a standpoint of the potential to spread anything at all. So I didn't go. I got on the phone. But here's the thing, though. For ESPN, for the last several years, they have sent out a camera crew with me, and I've doubled back to 4 or 5 schools, and we've done little 4-minute features on those schools that we then turned into not just individual segments, but also put them together into a 30-minute SportsCenter special that aired over. And so we didn't do it last year, but it was tremendous fun. It's like we went and talked to the Wisconsin offensive line on a fishing boat, and we were fishing with them. We went out and found out what made the Miami linebackers tick. That kind of a thing. We just had a whole lot of fun. What the new defensive coordinator at Oklahoma was teaching his guys to teach them how to get more takeaways, how they strip the ball, what they're doing to be more aggressive on defense. And they were trying to strip the ball from me, and they were pretty good at it. And this all ended up as these features. Well, last year we couldn't do it. This year we're doing it virtually. In other words, I got on the phone with all these schools to get ideas, and then we're going to go out to put everything together with technology remotely, but we won't send a camera crew or me to the conference, to the campuses. We'll have their camera people shoot everything, and then we'll edit it all together. So that's what we're doing this year. Next year, we're going to go out. But I will tell you this, though. My wife and I still went out on a road trip. Just didn't do as much in terms of campuses as we normally do. But we went and saw the country. And I've got to tell you that the best places we went to were places we didn't even know existed. Like we're driving out of Yellowstone National Park, east out of Cody, Wyoming, out towards South Dakota to go to Mount Rushmore, and all of a sudden we drove through these canyons and mountains with 300-million-year-old rock formations that we had to stop. And this happened all over the western United States. So this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country that I didn't really see as much of when I was doing my tours to campuses because I was just on the interstate and getting to the next school.
I love it. It's great stuff. The road trip it's its own thing, right? It's such a phenomenon. It's kind of a lost art to some people because you can fly so many places now, but there is definitely no substitute for seeing the country that way. Trevor, let me throw this at you because you think through these things a lot. Darren and I we've been tossing out all kinds of things that we've seen, the creativity since July 1st with the NIL and some of the people that have jumped in and been proactive about it. And there's going to be a lot of directions this goes. One thing I think about, though, you understand the craft, right, and the time it takes to balance your school life, your social life when you're on campus, trying to become the best athlete you can, maybe pursue an NFL career if that's in the cards. And now, I see this, like if you wanted to, you could spend hours a week, trying to find ways to make $100 here, a couple $100 there. That opportunity might be out there for a lot of people, but can these athletes at this age balance that? And how concerned do you think coaches are about that aspect of it? I'm not sure if we lost Trevor.
We got him back. Yeah, you lost him in the middle of your question. I just called him back, so you might have to re-ask that.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to
Trevor, you back?
I was out of cell coverage on that road trip a lot, but I'm home now, so we're good.
Okay, good. Well, Trevor, I don't know if you heard the whole question, but it's a question of just balancing, trying to perfect your craft. Let's just say you're an outside linebacker, right? You're trying to learn all the nuances. You've got a lot of, you're spending a lot of time doing that, right? It's time management. You also want to have a social life. You've got to go to class. There's already a lot of time. It's, as they say a lot, it's a full-time job to be a college athlete. Now, you could almost add as many hours a week as you want on this NIL, right, and opportunities to make a few extra $100 there. How can you balance that? Is that too much to ask, I think, in a lot of cases? And will there be a sacrifice somewhere?
I think that the too much to ask depends on the individual player. I think, I remember Quentin Nelson, who plays guard for the Colts now, one of the best most vicious offensive linemen in the NFL. When he was at Notre Dame, I was on my tour there, and I was walking by the players' lounge and ran into him. And so he looked like he was busy, so I just asked him one quick question. I said, Quentin, what is it about being a Notre Dame football player that people just don't know? And I thought he'd talk about the pressure or the history or whatever. No, he said time management. Because of the requirements of the academic side of being a Notre Dame student, and then you put that together with football, it's time management, but they're able to do it. It's the same thing at the service academies, right? Stanford, Vanderbilt, same kind of a thing. And so really it's a matter of learning how to manage time better, and I think there's a big incentive for players who can make money if they can squeeze some time out of their schedule for the NIL stuff, because, man, there's already being some really big deals being signed all over college sports, not just in football. And there are a lot more to come. And so I think they'll have a real incentive to get a day planner and figure out how to squeeze some extra time out of the day and stop wasting 15 minutes here and there.
I try to think about that part of it. The time management is so big. It is going to be an interesting balance. And I wonder, too, how coaches will be proactive with that, right, to try to help their players manage all of that, right? It's a process. It's already tough enough. It's been tough enough without this aspect there. And now, progressive coaches are going to want to take advantage of this and make sure it's a positive thing for the athletes. But I think if it's left unchecked, you might have some people that have trouble with that balance.
Well, they will, and I think they'll start to see money if they go out and do appearances and maximize what they can do with name, image, and likeness. This isn't all the players, but the ones who really have access to that kind of money. And what they'll probably do is sacrifice school. They'll sacrifice their grades, so they can go out. So in other words, instead of studying for 4 hours today, they're going to study for 1 hour and spend 3 hours doing appearances. So
right,
that's something that could
do that.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they won't sacrifice football because that's where the bread is buttered when it comes to name, image, and likeness. But I think that the bigger problem for coaches is going to be what to do about agents, because players are able to have representation, which basically amounts to agents, to help them put together these NIL deals. And now who does the player work for? I mean, what if you're heading into, say, November and the player's a receiver who's got a tweaked hamstring and he can play and play well, but the agent for NIL is thinking, look, to maximize your abilities, you need to make sure you're fully healthy for the stretch run. You go tell the coach you're not playing for the next 2 weeks, right? But the trainer says he can play. And so what does the player do now? And so the influence of those agents is something that we just don't know what it's going to be. But I know that coaches, because I've talked to them, coaches are concerned about how they're going to deal with it if it rises up and becomes a problem.
Good luck with that. I guess that's why they get paid the big bucks, right?
Yeah. Well, they get paid the big bucks now, and that's part of the reason players are going to start getting paid.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. Yeah. Trevor, good stuff as always. Really appreciate the visit. Good to hear from you. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you down the road.
I'm happy to join you. Thanks for having me on.
Trevor Maddich, good stuff from him as always. His work can be found on ESPN and, of course, every Tuesday on Stillman and Company. I want to talk to you right now about Conor McGregor and Poirier 3. Yeah, it's happening this weekend. UFC 264 and DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the UFC, has a knockout offer for this weekend's fight. This is what you have to do. Just going to offer you, DraftKings is going to give you 264-1 odds on a knockout in the first round in Saturday's main event. If the rubber match ends in a first-round knockout, you walk away with the cash. All you have to do is pick that main event fighter that you think will win by a first-round knockout. DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 264-1 odds on that fighter. That's right. You just put up $1 on either Conor McGregor or Poirier, and if they win by a first-round knockout, you win $264. There's no better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to put your money where your mouth is, and that's with DraftKings Sportsbook. Don't worry. If MMA isn't for you, they've got great odds and promotions on basketball, hockey, and so much more. It's safe, secure, and reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use the promo code 1025GAME, and when you sign up, turn $1 into $264 when you bet on that main event fighter to win by a first-round knockout. Place your bet right now. Watch the fist fly this weekend. Use that code again, 1025GAME, and turn $1 into $264. You must be 21 years of age or older, Tennessee only. New customers only. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. If you're someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text Call or text the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789. All right, let's go on and give you a chance to win something. We like to give things away here. How about a pair of tickets to the ultimate social experience? The Blended Festival. That's August 13th and 14th. That's at First Horizon Park. Live performances by Little John, Matt Stell, Blanco Brown, Bryce Vine, and much, much more. Massive 100-foot wine tasting tent, culinary activations by Nashville's hottest chefs, plus relaxing wellness lounge, VIP village, and a lot more. Tickets on sale right now at blendedfestival.com, but you've got a chance to win a pair of tickets to that event by answering this question. Andrei Vasilevsky became the first goalie to win the Conn Smythe since 5 other goalies have done it since 1997 and 98. In other words, he was the 6th to do it. So a goalie to win the Conn Smythe, which was the playoff MVP, in the last almost 25 years, there's been 6 goalies. He became the 6th. If you can name one of the other 5 goalies, just one, name one of them that has won the Conn Smythe, which is the playoff MVP, you will be going to that festival. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. That is our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Name one goaltender in the last 25 years that has won the Conn Smythe. Tell Elijah that, and if it's correct, you're going to that festival. So good luck to you as the phone lines start to pop. All right, I thought that one might be a little bit hard. Maybe not. You think you've got a couple? I
I think I was I was not in hockey mode when you asked the question, so I had to switch in my brain.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
By the way, already have a winner. Wow, that was quick. Good for the listeners.
Okay, so there's five possible answers besides Vasilevsky?
Yep.
And this is since what year?
Since 97, 98. So basically when the Predators came into existence.
Okay.
There's a lot of stalling.
Jeez.
Do you know who the last one was? 2012. You'll get it. We talked about him earlier.
Jonathan Quick.
Yeah,
Jonathan Quick.
We talked about L.A. earlier. Yep. Jonathan Quick was the last one. 2012, there was actually one the year prior to that.
2011. Golly, why is it? My brain is moving slow. So 2010, it was the Blackhawks that won. 2011, who won? I'm trying to. The years are running together on me.
Just think about that year. Think about the playoffs.
The Predators won.
You should remember who came out of the West.
Tim Thomas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because who came out of the West?
God. I'm just not as quick as I was. Well, the Vancouver Canucks came out of the West.
The Knuckleheads. That's why I said remember.
And they had the riot in the thing. It's just my brain is moving slow. It's getting there. I'm just not as quick as I was.
Peter Laviolette would get 06. That was Cam Ward.
Cam Ward, a rookie who won the Conn Smythe. Okay. So that's three.
This is the one nobody would get. No one. J.S. Jaguar, right? 03.
Oh, in a losing effort. Yeah.
Nobody would have ever gotten that one.
I remember at the time, Darren, you and I were doing the night show when they were making their run, and we had Steve Carroll, radio voice of the Ducks, who had previously worked with the Nashville Sounds as their radio play-by-play and did the Nashville Knights back in the day, the minor league hockey team. And he said he had done something like, what was it, like 45 interviews in one day about J.S. Jaguar and the Ducks because they were sort of an out-of-nowhere group back then.
And then Patrick Roy, or Waugh, 01.
Mr. Roy.
I wonder how many times he got
when
called
in doubt,
Roy
that's one you just throw
in
out
his
there.
life. Can you imagine just how brutal that must have been? Like, yes, Mr. Roy.
Gosh.
Every time he had a dentist appointment or a doctor appointment, Mr. Roy, we're ready for you. It's Waugh. Yes, Mr. Roy, come on back.
I would think in Quebec. Quebec, probably not as many times, but outside of Quebec, probably many times.
I would say yes. There are certain areas where, sure, they would get it right, and that would be one of them.
They might get it right there.
But other places, I'm sure he got tired of correcting people. I'm sure he just went with it. Sure, that's me. Yeah, I'm coming. Right behind you. Sure, Mr. Roy, that's me. So there you go. Patrick Waugh, J.S. Jaguar, Cam Ward, Tim Thomas, Jonathan Quick was the last in 2012. And now you can add Andre Vasilevsky to that list. So congratulations to Kyle Humphreys. All right. Good job. We got one quick. Who did Kyle guess?
Kyle guessed Tim Thomas. That was his guess.
Tim Thomas. Okay. I like that pull. He went a little deep with that. I figured Quick, would be the first choice by most because it was the most recent. I figured there was a chance Patrick Waugh would get in that conversation as well. Everybody remembers that Colorado team. They were very, very good. So, yeah, good stuff. So congratulations to Kyle. Go enjoy that festival. Willie, it looks like Vanderbilt basketball got some good news since we've been off the air yesterday.
Well, not just good news, great news. I can tell you, as we were driving back from Birmingham last night, I hadn't paid attention to anything. I didn't even get to watch the deciding game of the Stanley Cup. Our team was playing a doubleheader. But we got into the car. We were a little down, lost the game. Mahoney checks his phone, and just his eyes popped. And he said, Scottie Pippen is coming back. And it just seemed to put him in a whole different mindset. It just softened the blow of a tough loss on the field. But I just think you can't even put a level of impact that's going to be for the Vanderbilt program. Like, let's say that he had stayed professional. Tell me about Vanderbilt's basketball team this coming year. Tell me what are you linking to? What are you leaning on? It's a total unknown. And in year 3 for Jerry Stackhouse, that's not a good thing, right? Completely nothing you can really sink your teeth in terms of the foundation he's laid, because there's a ton of turnover on the roster. You had transfers coming in, and all of that he had fought to build the foundation the first 2 years seemed to be back to square one. Now it's not perfect, because if you had Dylan Dessou back with Scottie Pippen, you'd really have something. Dessou, as we know, got injured and has decided to transfer. But having Scottie Pippen back, one of the best players in the SEC going into his junior year, what a shot in the arm that is. And now you can at least sit there, if you're Jerry Stackhouse and the program, and say, okay, got a chance to take another big step forward with the program. I don't know if they're an NCAA tournament team with him back. I think there's going to be a lot of unknowns with the transfers coming in, the freshmen coming in, the returning players, that blend. It's hard to kind of see who fits where, but now you know who everything's going to run through. And if Scottie Pippen, who we know puts tons of time and energy into his own development, Jerry Stackhouse is great at developing players, I think it's a really smart move for Scottie Pippen, number one, because I think, Darren, I don't know if you agree with me, when he decided to go pro, I just thought, maybe it'll work, but I just thought another year in the SEC, getting bigger, getting stronger, being the main man at Vanderbilt would pay huge dividends, and I'm just glad it came to that. And he realized it himself, right? He went through the entire process. He saw what was out there, and he made his choice. And that's a huge benefit for Vanderbilt, and I hope it is for Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it will serve him well, in my opinion. It is great news. The question I have is, we've been talking to so many people now that NIL is 8 days in, so they're just over a week in now. We've talked about it so much already on this show. Can that help Vanderbilt basketball? Can that help Jerry Stackhouse? Is there a way that this can give them some type of advantage? I mean, I know everybody could do it, but is there a way they can use this to their advantage? Is there a way that this can help their basketball program moving forward?
I think it's a great question, because we know there are 14 teams in the SEC. None of them are in a major market. Or Nashville is clearly the biggest city in any SEC market. You have to try to use that to your advantage, I think, if you're anywhere in the Vanderbilt program. Remember, we're talking not just men's basketball, but men's and women's sports up and down. We've seen, remember our conversation yesterday, which was great, with Dan Daunic, and he said, his wife, who is a women's coach, women's athlete, she was saying, look at the opportunities for females. They're the ones that are really going to be able to take advantage of this very smartly. Scottie Pippen is unique, right? His dad, we know, I don't know if Scottie is, really interested in that, but if he is, he's got the Nashville market. He's got an extremely marketable name. He's got 2 years under his belt of being a pretty high-profile player in the SEC, coming back for his third year, right? That's pretty rare. Usually if you're an all-SEC player, a lot of times you're not back for a third straight year. But he could take advantage of that, the name recognition. So I think if he gets connected up with the right people and it's streamlined the right way, we know there's huge opportunities for him. That's an obvious one, right?
Well, why couldn't Dad help him? I mean, we just talked to Brian Collins yesterday, and there's no question. I mean, Hersey Miller, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. In fact, who was it that just told a great story? It was Tim Brando, who said, look, my dad got me my first job, helped me get my first job. He's like, I don't have any shame in that. He's like, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing if I didn't get that first opportunity. Then it was up to me from there, but Dad helped me get through the door and start out, and then it's been up to me the rest of the way. But, Master P, his father, he should not be, say, well, I've never really understood I want to do it on my, I want to do it on my own. It's like, well, I mean, that's great and that's fine. You don't want to be dependent, but Also, there's no shame. It's not your fault. That's the family you were born into. That is your parent, and if they can help you, what's wrong with that? And so, I mean, Hersey Miller is certainly reaping the benefits of having Master P, who is a very, very, very successful businessman as his father, which helped broker him a $2 million deal while he's at Tennessee State playing basketball, which is not a bad thing to do. But why not? I mean, why would you do that? So why can't dad help son in this case and what we're talking about?
There's no question that if that's an interest of Scottie Pippen. Now, I do think there's going to be a cross-section of athletes, Darren, and Scottie Pippen may or may not be one. The motivation might be maybe you come from a family that is financially stressed, right? And it would be a big deal for your family to make a few extra $1,000, not just for you personally, but, just for maybe the flexibility of being able to fly home easily, without having to stress about the plane ticket or something like that, or be able to send money home to your family who might need some extra cash that would really help them out. That could be a huge motivation for some. Others, they might say, just like we were talking about with Trevor Maddich for time management purposes, right? Hey, I want to just work on my craft. Scottie Pippen strikes me as a guy that is always looking to try to get better. His detail to his game is really something. You can see the amount of hours and time he's put into his game. So he may not be interested in that part of it. If he is, great. But I can tell you, he's probably not wired to take time away from, what his focus is on about making it to the NBA someday. Because if he makes it, barring a huge growth spurt like his dad had, which I guess you never know, he's not going to make it because he's a physical freak, right? He's going to make it because he's getting every ounce out of his talent on the basketball court. So we'll see if he goes down that avenue. But I do think a high-profile name like him who does delve into that can really springboard not only himself, but also the program, right? This program desperately needs some attention, right? They need some identity. They need some magnetism that draws people in this market towards that program. It's, there was COVID last year. They haven't been real good the last 3 or 4 years. They've had trouble getting momentum. They need momentum. And this could be a great momentum boost in a number of ways, just him coming back.
Yeah. Now, there's no doubt. One, yes, they desperately need that, what you said. I mean, they could use a real shot on the arm when it comes to people getting excited about the program again, people talking about the program.
Yeah.
They really
maybe
really
other
need
players, maybe attracting other players to the program, right?
Yeah.
Not just fans, but other players who can help them win.
Yeah, but that is the question, is no matter how they go about NIL and what that can do to help them, the question is with him coming back, what are they as a basketball team? What are they going to be? Are they an NCAA tournament team? I don't know.
I think it's a stretch.
I don't know. There's no proof of that. There's no proof that they're knocking on that doorstep. But, it is interesting to see, is there going to be growth? Are they going to take a step forward? Because I think a lot of times when it comes to evaluating things, it's about the growth chart. And I know the growth chart is never as quick as the fan base in, any university's fan base, for most of them. It's never fast enough, right? Because typically everybody wants everything right now. But you do have to show growth. I mean, that there is something to that. And this is going to be, year 3? For Jerry Stackhouse?
This will be year 3. Yeah, and he took it over at a really low time, as we know.
Low time. Mm-hmm.
But they've got to win more games, right? They showed some fight last year. They were super young, but they've got to win more games this year. They lost a lot of close ones. I think 500 in the league is a reasonable goal. They've got some transfers, right? So how do they fit in? Taryn Frank, for example, they're pretty high on him. There's a transfer from Minnesota. Like there's all these guys that will be new to the program. I'm looking at their webpage right now. Some of these guys have not been assigned uniform numbers, at least not that they've made it to the webpage on the official site. So how do all these guys fit together? It's a total unknown. So who's back? You've got Pippen. Jordan Wright, I think, is another guy that has learned under Jerry Stackhouse. He's a guy they can lean on. Miles Studi, Trey Thomas had their moments last year as freshmen. How much better can they be as sophomores? And then you've got a serviceable big man in Quentin Millora-Brown. Can he get a lot better from last year to this year? I don't know. But so there's a lot of maybes. There's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of ifs. But having Pippen, I think, gives you hope that they can turn some of these games that they came up just a little bit short into W's. And that's what it's going to take just to get to 500 in the league. And then can you pull off some wins that have impact with a committee? And it's a big jump, right? But at least you've got to get into that postseason discussion. Even NIT, that would be progress, right? Because you got to build to where, like we said, momentum starts happening and better players on the recruiting trail are looking at you and saying, yeah, I'm interested in Vanderbilt. I'm interested in Nashville. It's a huge market. NIL can work in there. I think they've got to work proactively the NIL angle because it's unique in the SEC.
Yeah, no doubt
a major league market.
Yep. We will come back and wrap up the third hour of Darren, Daunic, and Chase. We'll do that next. If you're looking for a place to hang, we talked to Drake Hills to start the second hour. Of course, Nashville SC hosting a big tilt tonight at Nissan Stadium against Atlanta United. So if you're looking for a place beforehand from 5 until 7 o'clock, how about the pre-match party at the Hard Rock Cafe downtown? Party for the match on Broadway. Get some game swag if you go there. You can register to win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Nashville SC home game. Then head on over to Nissan Stadium for that 7:30 p.m. match. Get your tickets now for Nashville SC at NashvilleSC.com. And you can also tune in tonight if you're not going to be able to attend on 94.9. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. Some people not happy with Nikita Kucherov. I don't know if you saw his post. I watched the celebration. I know you were driving back. I watched it. I don't know why. I get on baseball players for sitting there and watching. I don't know why I sit there and watch Tampa Bay celebrate, but I did. To be honest, it was kind of awkward. Have you watched any of it since you've been back? I know, like I said, you were traveling, but did you, I mean, it was like the whole Gary Bettman thing was weird. Like him standing in there during the team picture and calling them over and talking to the crowd while they're sitting there taking pictures. I don't know. It was just a little bit awkward. But Nikita Kucherov, I saw Chris Johnston tweet this out. This is what Nikita Kucherov said after the game. And I watched the pressers too, which I don't know why. I just did. I guess maybe nothing else was on that interested me. He said, this is Nikita Kucherov. The fans in Montreal acted like they won the Stanley Cup last game. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Their final was last round. Yikes. Throwing a little shade.
And keep in mind, he had no shirt on. He had no shirt on when he said this as well. Correct? He was shirtless.
He was shirtless. Okay. Does that enhance the statements?
The Bud Light in hand might have more to do with enhancing the statements. I was telling Ryan when I came in this morning, any guy that's shirtless with a Bud Light in hand, you're going to have to be able to watch out. This guy's a loose cannon.
Well, I will say this. ESPN broke away from their coverage. I'm sorry, NBC, excuse me. NBC, and they signed off for the last time. So that is it for their coverage on NBC. But they broke away and ended it. So I watched everything that was on NBC and then went over to NHL Network because that's where they continued on with the celebration, and they had the post-game pressers, and they had Maroon was one of them, okay? It was – I'm trying to remember the other two. Anyway, it's irrelevant because Patty Maroon had a little bit of potty mouth. Patty with the potty. And this is on NHL Network. And
see, I don't understand that. There's no reason for that. There's absolutely no reason to do
okay,
that.
so that's why I'm bringing it up. So that's exactly – so I think you've got the – so I sat there and I was like, dude, really? Like you don't know like what stage you're on right now? Like he dropped the F-bomb like 3 times in the microphone. Like just like made a point to say it. And the last one was when some of his teammates were in the background going – repeat or whatever, and he's like, you're, blanking right, blah, blah. And I'm going, come on, Pat. Like, you've been around, like, come really? On, like, what are you?
This is your third straight. This is the third straight time they've won.
You've been on this stage like you're doing a national press conference, okay? What? Really? And so I debated this, and I think I know where you're going with this because I wasn't sure. I was like, is this a big deal or not a big deal? Because I feel like it's a big deal. Like, I felt like putting him on the list tomorrow for that. Like, dude, you should know better than that. Like, what are you doing dropping F-bombs in the press conference? Come on, man. Like, really? In fact, the NHL Network, I forget the host, he like came back and was like, this is, we're going to break away from that. This is a family show, and, because he'd done it 3 times. And I'm like, come on, man, be better than that. It's like, what are you doing? You're not in the locker room with nobody around with the door shut. So I was like, do I do that? Or is that like, is that being a priss pot, Willie, which you've been accused of being on this show? Is that me being a priss pot? Like, come on, man. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't have a potty mouth. I don't have it when we're on the air. I don't have it in front of my kid. I don't have it in front of anybody else. It's more in private settings. My mouth at times can get a little, needs to be maybe washed out with some soap. But come on, not on that stage. Like, what are you doing? So it sounds to me like if you were sitting there watching it like me, you would be doing the same thing. Like, come on, man. Come on, Pat. What are you doing?
Yes, they know this, right? They do hundreds of interviews over the course of their career, and they know that there's a line that you can't cross when you're doing an interview for TV or for broadcast purposes, and then when you're talking to your buddies and celebrating in the locker room. They know that. I don't understand why all of a sudden this has happened the last couple of years. They went for decades without this being a problem. It's not just hockey. It's happened a few times in other sports, but it seems like hockey, when they're on the ice there, especially right in the moment, it's one thing for somebody away from the interview and the mic picks it up like somebody's shouting or coming in. But when you're actually on the microphone, how can you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. There's no excuse for that.
I agree. Elijah, you've got which audio do you have?
Is this the Kucherov?
Yeah, I have the whole thing. I've got it clipped right now to the point we could play him ripping on the Canadians fans for celebrating. This one's pretty good.
All right, let's hear Nikita Kucherov.
I'm so happy I didn't want to go back to Montreal, but the fans in Montreal, come on. They acted like they won the Stanley Cup last game. Are you kidding me?
John Romano, Tampa Bay Times.
Their final was last series. Okay,
so that's exactly what I just read. So, I mean, it's just hearing it out of his mouth. So
a little slurred, I guess you could say a little bit. I mean, I think when you hear the effect, you can hear the Bud Light in his voice.
Okay, so let's okay, so now that you've planted the seed, all right. So let's hear it again and see if we can hear Bud Light coming through.
I'm so happy I didn't want to go back to Montreal, but the fans in Montreal, come on. They acted like they won the Stanley Cup last game. Are you kidding me?
John Romano, Tampa Bay Times.
Their final was last series. Okay.
You're kidding me?
You kidding me?
Hey.
He sounded like he was getting tired
You're
saying
kidding
that.
me?
Like, you're kidding me? He's like nodding
But
off.
even that too, is that really necessary to dump on the Canadians? You won. You just won. Focus on that. I don't know what the question was, but you can pivot away from having to go there.
The question had nothing to do
maybe
with
you
Montreal.
could say, look, we had a little extra motivation. Yeah, come on. Why go there? That doesn't make you or your team look good. But he did it.
Do you have Pat Maroon with beeps in it?
Oh, I don't have that one.
Didn't do it like one
That
after
would
another.
take
It
an
was
extra 2 hours.
they just so he does it, and then they keep talking and keep asking questions. Then he does it again, and then he does it toward the end. I'm like, really, man? Come on, just be better than that. Jeez, you've won 3 Stanley Cups in a row. Like, you don't know how to do a freaking press conference on that stage? Come on. Just like, I know you're excited. Do that stuff away from the mic.
Excuse.
I mean, that's fine. That's fine. Do it away from the mic, but jeez. By the way, our buddy Jay Reacher, he got the last question in on the press conference. He was pretty pumped. He's always fun to talk to. I mean, look, we'd be pumped too.
Yes.
We lived in that market, right? If this was happening in Nashville, man, we'd be on cloud 9. Having all these parades all the time. Titans had won the Super Bowl, back-to-back Stanley Cups. Like, we'd be probably a little insufferable too, I would say. I'd like to experience that, though. I want to see how big of how insufferable we would be.
That'd be insufferable.
Well, think
right
about
there.
the market.
How bad do you think it would be for us? Like, how bad do you think we would be?
Well, you get on people's lists is what happens. People start putting you on the list. You start to become the team. We were talking about this dynamic with Vanderbilt baseball. Once you win a certain amount, right, you become a team that is on the top of the list of most fun teams to beat. It just goes with the territory. It happened to the Red Sox. They were the darling team for a long time that hadn't won it. 1918, Bill Buckner. Hey, now they won. It's a totally different feel when you play the Red Sox, right? It's the hated Red Sox. They've won it 3 times, and they're a superpower, right? It's totally different. Same thing even for the Cubs, who've only won it the 1 time, but it's not the same. They're not the darlings that they were, and their fans are everywhere. So it becomes more of an annoying thing where you want to beat them. Once you get to that level, you become fun to beat. So I think Tampa is getting to that, right? As a sports market, they've got the Bucks, they've got the Lightning. They're on the top of the mountain, and people want to knock off the top of the mountain. It's so interesting that in this blend in that city is the Rays, right, who have overachieved, small market, no fans, bad stadium, all kinds of problems, but still a great baseball team. They're still kind of an underdog in a city full of winners, right? It's kind of a weird dynamic in there.
Yeah, we'll continue this conversation rolling to start the final hour. We'll do that with Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet. We do that next. Fourth and final hour, Darren, Daunic, and Chase here on ESPN 102.5 The Game. We've talked a lot of Nashville SC today. For good reason. Big one at Nissan Stadium. They host Atlanta United. Don't forget Nashville SC fans on 94.9 Monday nights during the 7 o'clock hour. NSC Backstage featuring Nashville SC players and coaches, special guest on Monday nights. And this Monday night upcoming will be Nashville SC General Manager Mike Jacobs. You can watch the show online via our game's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and thegamenashville.com. NSC Backstage brought to you by Camarena Tequila, the official tequila of Nashville SC. We are should have Elliot Friedman here in just a moment. I just saw now what you guys were referencing. I must have missed the Kucherov press conference, but now I did see where he was sitting there shirtless. So maybe that did tell a little bit of a story now that I've seen the visual of him sitting there by himself at the podium with no shirt on. So maybe he had a little bit enhancement there, a little liquid encouragement, possibly. So that makes sense.
Let's just say he had started the celebration. He was mid celebration when he took the podium.
There's no doubt about that. So we shall see. So it'll be interesting to see, can Tampa three-peat? Hopefully not, but a lot of things going on. This is going to be an active month here in the National Hockey League. Of course, like I said, 9 more days. The lists have to be submitted for the expansion draft. There's going to be an expansion draft. There's going to be a draft. Free agency. There's going to be all kinds of stuff, Willie, that we're going to be getting hot and heavy into. And, oh, by the way, hopefully this will be – there was a lot of references of this last night. Hopefully this is the last of a condensed offseason, that they're going to get back on track and start things at normal time. And so we're not talking about a Stanley Cup final in July, right? Like I said, this is going to be a short turnaround. This was a short turnaround for Tampa. Think about when it ended in the bubble. It was a short turnaround, and they did it again, and they're going to get a short turnaround again. Can they do it 3 years in a row? So the business in the National Hockey League will be being conducted this month, and there'll be a lot of things going on that we'll be discussing.
No question about it. It is going to be a whirlwind, I think. It's going to be really exciting to cover, not only just straight from the Predators, but also throughout the league. You got some pretty big names that are out there. Are they going back to their original team? Will they be traded? There's the Tarasenko article that hit today that I think hit a lot of people right between the eyes at what's going on there. You've got Seth Jones. There's a lot of, I think, some really interesting stories to cover, on top of the fact that you got a brand new team that based on what happened in the last go-round of expansion, this is a major thing as they build their first ever team.
Yep. And if you didn't hear us talking about it earlier, Tarasenko has informed the Blues that he wants to get traded. He wants out in St. Louis. The story goes that he's had now 3 surgeries on his shoulder. The first 2 were conducted by the Blues staff and their medical team. He did not like the way it was going. He sought out a second opinion out in Colorado. And he indeed had a 3rd surgery, which was not conducted by someone on the Blues staff or someone involved in the organization, one of their team doctors. And basically the picture is being painted that he doesn't really trust the organization. He's lost trust in the organization. So he has told St. Louis, or his agent has told St. Louis, that he would like to be traded. He does have a no-trade clause, but I guess is willing to waive them. And on there, it looked like he had about 8 or 10 teams that realistically he would like to be traded to. Nashville was not on that list. I didn't expect them to be on the list, but we'll see where that goes. He joins a long list of big names in the sport that have told their organization, hey, I wouldn't mind if you traded me. I wouldn't mind, if that were the case. Jack Eichel in Buffalo, Seth Jones in Columbus. And so there's a growing list of big-name players in the league that said, hey, I wouldn't mind being on the move. And quite honestly, in our conversation with David Poyle last week and the way he talked about the Victor Arvidsson trade, it seemed like there was pretty mutual interest, in that too. And in fact, Elliot Friedman told us last week that he had been told that Victor Arvidsson had requested a trade out of Nashville, but he couldn't get anybody to confirm it or deny it. So who knows? That may have been also going on here around Victor Arvidsson. By the way, I'm just trying to do looks like Elijah is telling us that Elliot is on a plane and said he forgot to tell us. So he's, I think, going to join us tomorrow.
So maybe Elliott was doing a little celebrating there. I guess he's actually been excited to be able to cover the Stanley Cup final in person. So he's been in Tampa. He's been in Montreal. Most of what they were doing all year long for Hockey Night in Canada was, positioned centrally in Toronto. So he's been on the move more. So it looks like we're going to catch up with Elliott tomorrow, and we'll have plenty to talk about for sure. But, I think it's fascinating, Darren, that you've got Tarasenko, right, who has 3 shoulder surgeries, and the first 2 clearly didn't get the job done. The third one was not done by the team. So normally he'd be an extremely enticing guy who's on the market, but he's demanding a trade. He's got 2 years left on his deal at $7.5 million cap hit. He's 29. He has not been productive the last 2 seasons, even though he was a surefire 30-plus guy in terms of goals per year for a long time. So it's complicated, right? You need to really get all the info on his health. And I think the same thing applies to Jack Eichel, right, who's even younger, but he's got quite a unique injury as well, right? A neck situation. And very similarly, he and the team have had maybe some differing views on how to treat it, what's the best way to do it. But what are you trading for if you get a Tarasenko or an Eichel, knowing that there's a little bit of an X factor with the health of these players? I think it makes it a really, really intriguing thing as to what you would be willing to give to get a talent like that. Those guys are game-changing talents normally when they're healthy. But what are you getting? What percentage of them are you getting? Are they 100%? It's like Peyton Manning when he had the neck thing, right? And he was at the stage of his career. It could have gone a number of different ways, right? And as it turned out, it was a great, worthy thing for the Broncos to dive in there and go after him because they got very productive years in the final stages of his career.
2 years, 2 trips to the Super Bowl, I would say so. Yeah, I mean, that is the risk.
And a ring.
All that being tossed aside, you have those guys saying demanding a trade, and none of that was not in the equation. It's like, whoa, what's the price tag for that? How do you make that work? It's kind of like the Aaron Rodgers part of things. Well, you can't make it work because of all the money. We've talked to enough people now that everybody seems to be like all signs are pointing towards he's remaining in Green Bay because they can't trade him. It doesn't make any sense to trade him, even if he wants out because of the dead money, because of the cap hit. So it makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know if those guys, they didn't have these situations, these health issues that you're bringing up, if they weren't on the table, I mean, it would take a lot. It would take quite the haul to get these guys, but that is not the case. Like the Seth Jones part, that is, there's only one thing that's in factor for Seth Jones. The other team has to be guaranteed that they're getting him long term, right? That is, I feel pretty confident. I feel pretty confident about that. You're not going to give up what it's going to take to get Seth Jones if you don't think you're going to have him inked for a long time.
I don't know if you can get a guarantee, but I think you would certainly, if you're going to invest in a trade. But that's the intriguing part of that is what are the offers to Columbus for him? Because I don't know if that you can get that guarantee. I don't know if you have the ability to say, Seth, if we trade for you, we need a commitment. Now, it did happen. Remember, Kyle Turris agreed before he ever played a game for the Predators to a contract, and that didn't work out so well for the Predators, as we know. But they were able to get that assurance that if they were going to give up good assets to get him, that they wanted him beyond the 1 year. So I guess it can be done, but that remains to be seen. But there are no health issues that we know of Seth Jones, right? He's in the prime of his career. I think he's extremely attractive. But I think that Tarasenko reminds me a little bit of Julio Jones, don't you think, Darren? He's got even more severe health concerns than Julio Jones did. But because the bridge seems to be burned, it's almost an assumption that he's not going to be back in St. Louis, it does affect what kind of trade offers they can get. Plus, he can veto a trade. He's got a no-trade clause. So I think Blues fans might end up being kind of underwhelmed if they trade for what they're going to get back for Tarasenko. It may not be a whole lot. That would be my prediction right now.
Well, you only need one team to be desperate. You only need one
That's true.
team.
Well, that's what you would have thought with Julio Jones, right? I'm sure there were some Falcon fans going, we only got a second round. We didn't get a first-round pick for Julio Jones. Don't you think there's going to be some of that?
I mean, Julio Jones, to me, it's really just about his age, I feel like.
Tarasenko's the same age.
Tarasenko's 29. How old's Julio? I thought Julio was 32.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Julio is a little bit older. You're correct on that. My mistake.
32 for a receiver is a little bit different than look, 29 and 32 is different, period, in professional sports, but especially in football. I mean, you know, I think they count, once you get in your 30s, every year's counted like in dog years, how old you are, which makes Tom Brady 152, but still going strong. Yeah, I don't know. You only need one team. And when I say desperate, I mean desperate as in they just fall in love with just having Tarasenko in their lineup, right? I mean, it's pretty easy to I mean, he's still a very, very talented player. Very talented player, and everybody knows that. So you only need one GM to sit there and go, what if? Boy, add him to our roster and everything checks out okay. Whew. And once he starts thinking about it, once he starts thinking of what the, lineup would look like and always going, and if it checks out, and then the next thing you know, he's going, we got to have him. We got to have him. And so it only takes one team to then I think Tarasenko, it seems like the marriage is done in St. Louis. That seems pretty clear. I don't know how you get back from that because there's trust issues and also it's out there publicly that you've said I want out. And so how do you walk that back with the fan base? They're not going to feel the same way about you that you're trying to get out. So to me, it seems like a marriage that's about to be dissolved. So you just find one landing spot. And I don't think that's going to be really a hard thing to do. Now, I don't think St. Louis should expect the moon in return. I think they're going to be able to move him and get something decent back, but you're not going to get the moon back. You're not. I mean, you can't have 3 shoulder surgeries on the table and a guy it's going to be 30 during the season and expect to get the moon back. There's just no way. But you can get probably some pretty attractive pieces on the way back for a guy who wants out. So I suspect.
Well, are you though? Okay, let me just. Okay, you're a shopper, Darren. You're a shopper for Tarasenko. Okay, this is what you need to know. Remember, they won the Stanley Cup in 2020. I'm sorry, in 2019. He missed the entire next year in the regular season because of the shoulder surgery, and he had 2. He comes back in the playoffs in the bubble a year ago in Edmonton, right? And they lose to Vancouver. The defending champions lose to Vancouver in that postseason. Tarasenko played in 4 games. He scored a couple of goals, and then he gets the 3rd surgery that is not done by the team. So that entire year, that's his season. Then last year, he missed the entire year up until, he came back in March. He scored 4 goals the entire season, 24 regular season games, and scored 2 goals when they got swept by the Avalanche in the playoffs. So that's his last 2 years. That's a very small amount of production, albeit we know why. It's because of the injury. But what are you trading for, right? I don't know if I'm going to trade big assets back because there's major question marks there. as to what he can be. A shoulder is pretty important to a goal scorer, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean, it's hard to make a case otherwise. I mean that does tell a story. I mean, 2 years is 2 years. I mean, whether it's condensed schedules or not. I mean, 2 years is 2 years. I don't know. That is certainly it does not paint a flattering picture of what you're getting in return, because that sounds like a whole lot of Cuberts, some question marks, right? And so I still think somebody, and I don't know who somebody is. I'm trying to think of a team. I mean, look, Tampa was mentioned in here, which I don't even understand that. I don't. Tampa's going to have to do some maneuvering. Kucherov is back. They're going to have to do some things in this. It's unrealistic. Like I was surprised to see. Of course, they're saying he wants to go to a winning, a team that's a chance at winning the cup. So okay, I see why you put Tampa on that list. But I mean, they can't pull off his salary. He's got what, 1 or 2 more years left on his
2 years left at 7.5. 7.5 for 2 years. No way, Tampa. No way.
Yeah, no, Tampa's
There's just not enough teams. There's not enough teams that have that kind of salary cap space who are contenders, because that's what it seems like. Tarasenko, who has some control over this because he has a no-trade clause, he's going to say, I don't want to go to a rebuilding team. At this stage of my career, I want to go to a contender. Well, a lot of the contenders are up against the cap and would have trouble taking on that kind of salary. So the article mentions the Islanders, who probably have a little more room for a contract like that, and the Rangers, who have Artemi Panarin, who's a big contract, but he's buddies with Tarasenko, and they have, of course, a lot of young players who aren't on those second contracts that make it a little more doable for the Rangers salary cap wise. That one intrigues me. The Rangers could be the one, in my mind, that might be interested here.
What about the Florida Panthers? Bobrovsky's down there.
Cap issues. Big cap issues.
Cap issues?
According to the article, they've got cap issues, and I'm trying to, off the top of my head, it starts with they have a goalie that's making massive money that's not giving them barely even their starting goaltender in Bobrovsky, right? They're on the hook for that.
How much longer
they had to shed some payroll last year. Only about 7 or 8, 6 or 7 years. He signed the max deal, right? It was an 8-year deal at $10 million per year. So this will be his 3rd year on that deal.
Ooh.
It's a lot of coin.
Ooh.
And they have Barkov and Huberdeau and Ekblad. They've got to keep all those guys, and some of them are tied up. So I don't know how much space they have.
But remember, we're talking about this because, St. Louis will be back in the division, and it looks like St. Louis could be going the wrong direction. And maybe they're going to, while they're not willing to admit it today, they may be getting closer to that R word than they want to admit. But at some point, maybe they have to admit they're going to have to be basically rebuilding. Look, you can get away with that stuff whenever you've won the cup in the last couple of years, right? It's not like everybody's going to be happy about it, but things will be a little bit they'll be a little bit quieter than normal if you hadn't done anything, because when you win the cup, you get a little bit of a break for a while. You just do. And I suspect that they'll be throwing out the R word before you know it. They're not willing to do it right now, but especially if they move him, who's kidding who? The Blues are not. They're not a playoff team, I don't think. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I mean, they still think their window is open. They believe that they're still at the window. That's a big part of it, right? They're not ready to go into that retooling, rebuilding. They're trying to stay big time relevant, even though they've lost Pietrangelo. Now you've got this situation with Tarasenko. There's a number of other guys they've got to re-sign. I think Jaden Schwartz is a big one.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I look at their team. I think they're a playoff team for sure, but I don't know if they are among the Stanley Cup contenders on paper, with just dynamic teams like Colorado coming on and some of the other ones. But let me throw this at you, because people will naturally ask the question here. Of course, you've got St. Louis and Nashville. They're not common trade partners, right? They're in the same division. Naturally, you have GMs that probably don't want to do a whole lot of dealing together. But I'm guessing if you're David Poile, you would not be in this market, would you? Tarasenko for 2 years?
No.
Not a fit?
Nope. Not a fit.
I tend to agree. I just don't think this would be on the radar.
Not a fit. Let's go to our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Scott in Franklin, what's up?
Yes, I think one market they should be in is Jack Eichel. I haven't heard Nashville mentioned as a possibility for Eichel, but I think we could certainly put together a package that Buffalo would be interested in. And isn't Eichel's salary like $11 million?
Are you nervous about his neck?
No, I mean I think I'm less nervous about him than say Tarasenko, but I mean he's there's a lot of teams that seem to be interested in him that don't seem to mind the neck that much, but we've got pieces. I'm not saying you trade all these guys, but we've got Tomasino and Fabro and maybe even Tolvanen that you could pair with a bigger salary that's not as big as Eichel's, like Duchesne, and a pick. And I think it could be done.
All right, so what's the package, though? If you had to, you threw out a number of things on a list. You're not going to trade all of that, but what's...
No, say Duchesne Tomasino in a first, or Duchesne Tomasino, or Duchesne Tolvanen in a second and a third, or I don't know, something like that.
I think it's going to take more than that. I think if you're going to
that's a lot.
If you're going to ask them to take Duchesne's contract, then you're going to if you're not coming back with Tomasino and draft picks or something, I don't even think they're listening.
I just said Tomasino and draft picks. I said, okay. I even threw Tolvanen and Fabro in there. Not that we would get rid of all of that, but those are pieces that all could be moved for a guy who could potentially be a 50, 60 goal scorer.
Yeah,
or 50 or 60. I don't know about that. I mean, he's that's a
30
goal
scorer right now. I think he's making $10
he's a
million a year.
Dynamic player.
Yeah,
he's a dynamic player, and he's young. But that is, I do think the health questions. I need to know more. I want to be assured because he's had some health problems. Since he's been in Buffalo, it's been a mess with his team. He's dying to get out of there. It's a really interesting question. How much are those future assets? Because the one thing I would want to keep in mind if I'm the Predators is I don't have a super deep farm system right now. It's not super deep. So guys like Tomasino and Fabro and Tolvanen, those are precious assets right now. I don't know if I want to part. Askarov is another one that would have some value. I don't know. But it would be a very bold move. The other thing you don't know is what, if any, would be the interest level in Duchesne to start with if you're the Sabres.
Mm-hmm. Well, they wouldn't be doing it for Duchesne. They'd be doing it for the picks and the prospects more than likely. And Duchesne would be, hey, we've got a guy that can play, potentially, and we're having to take some salary back, but not as much salary as we're offloading. That's more how I see it.
Look, it's intriguing. There's no doubt about it. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to – by the way, he has not played a full season other than his rookie year. That's the only time he's played a full season.
That's why I said a potential 50 goal scorer if he were to play healthy for a full year, which there's no reason to think he can't.
Well, there's also a reason to think that he can't.
Well, there's a risk in everything.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a risk in everything. I was just wondering I just don't. There are very few places where a contract that huge could fit. But I think here, if we, I think we have the ability to do it.
Well, there's only one way, and it's unloading one of the two. Right. You got to get rid of one of the $8 million a year contracts. That's the only chance it's got. So it's intriguing, Scott.
That with a pick and with a prospect, and I think it becomes attractive to Buffalo.
Yeah, Who knows? I mean, it is certainly worth discussing. Thank you for the phone call. I mean, it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what Buffalo's looking for in return. I mean,
okay,
you're trading away a 24. He'll be 25 years old at the beginning of this season. You know, the biggest name on their roster, and second pick in the draft. I mean, I don't know what they're looking in return. I don't know how they feel about Jack Eichel and how much they covet him and what it would take to honestly pull that off. It sounded like a lot he threw out there, but is it a lot? Is it enough for Buffalo?
I think the answer to that question becomes, how does it compare with what other teams throw in there as offers to Buffalo? They're going to field multiple offers. Who puts in the most? That's going to be a big one. But here's my question back to you, Darren. Would you be more apt to go all in on Eichel, who is still very young, but there is the health concern, or Seth Jones, who has no health concerns and is a little bit older, but still in the prime of his career?
Who would I go all in on? Look, I know the fans will want a goal scorer. I get it. I would go all in on Seth Jones, me personally. But once again, you're going to have to shed something probably in return. I mean, you're going to have to give up one of the top defensemen in return along with a pack. I mean, you're just going to. So that's just me. I know probably if we ask the fans that, the fans are going to go where Scott went. They're going to go for the goal scorer, and I understand that logic. I mean, it's desperately needed. I mean, by the way, Jack Eichel's only had 30 or more goals once in his career, and that was the 1920 season. He had 36 goals. So he's been in the 20s.
The 50 or 60 goals is a bit of a reach. Now, he is a very dynamic player. There's some individual games he's had against Nashville that have been eye-popping.
Sure.
So
could he possibly get to 40? Sure. If he's healthy?
Oh, yeah.
Played
40,
a full season?
40,
sure.
yeah. But he said 50 or 60. He said 50 or 60. That's a little different than 40. But let me throw it to you this way, Darren. This is another thing that Scott mentioned that I think is something to emphasize. He said, we're one of the few teams, the Predators. He's saying we, the Predators. The Predators are one of the few teams that have some cap flexibility now with, relieving themselves of Arvidsson's contract. And Adam Vingan wrote about this today. They've got a decent amount of flexibility, but if they were to unload another big contract, then the big name guys that are out there are possibilities. Now, we know that is fraught with risk, right? As they did with Turris and they did with Duchesne. It doesn't always work out when you get a big name guy and bring him in there. But there are some guys out there that you would have the money to try to pull in. Seth Jones, Gabriel Landeskog. They mentioned Matthew Tkachuk down the road, maybe. Johnny Gaudreau. People are thinking Johnny Gaudreau needs a change of address. You could be in that game with your cap flexibility, but only if you unload one of those other big contracts, right?
Has no chance without it. Yep. That has to happen. It's nothing even to discuss if those two contracts are still in place, if one of them is. I mean, just you can't do it. I think I'm pretty sure he makes $10 million. So, yeah, it just goes without saying. But what do you think the answer? And we'll discuss this on the other side. What do you think the answer would be if you polled the fans, Jack Eichel or Seth Jones? Where do you think they would go? Do you think it's Eichel?
I think the fans
because of the scoring ability.
Yeah, I think the fans are starved for a goal scorer, a dynamic forward that they haven't really had. So I think the intrigue of Eichel would win out there. But I love the non-health issue. I love the known quantity of Seth Jones, and that's why I might lean that way. Eichel is $10 million per year.
He is 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Seth, I stepped out there and said Seth Jones pretty quick. Seth will be 27 at the start of this season, just like Eichel will turn 25 at the start of the season. I could certainly be talked into Eichel. I'll just put it to that. I quickly said Seth Jones, but I also I
got to know the health.
Yeah. All right, we'll come back. More.
I got to be assured on the height, on the neck.
As you listen to Darren, Daunic, and Chase, ESPN 102.5 The Game. Thank you, Matthias. Back here on Darren, Daunic, and Chase. So let's start there. What would be your terms for Matthias Ekholm? What should be the terms for Matthias Ekholm? David Poyle's made it pretty clear that Matthias Ekholm is going to be here. So what is the right contract for Ekholm moving forward? What do you think? Because we know there's two important pieces, both from Sweden, that David Poyle, the general manager, is going to have to address. One is him, and one is Philip Forsberg. And so what do you think is the right way to go about offering him something? We know he has been on a great deal, a team-friendly deal, which was smart. Matthias Ekholm is 31. He'll play all next season at 31 years of age. His contract is, what was he making? 3-something?
Just under 4.
3.75, 3.75, yeah. I mean, team-friendly.
I think Roman Yossi's previous contract was maybe the best bang for your buck of the era. I mean, it's among them. I don't know every contract of every player, but I would have to think it's right up there with any of them. And Matthias Ekholm, his cap hit is 3.75. He will actually be paid $5 million this year in actual salary, but it's balanced over the course of the length of the deal. But 3.75 cap hit for the years he served, unbelievable. Now he is 31, right?
Yep.
So what? First of all, let's get a timetable here, right? Are we talking about 4 years?
That's what I want to know.
3 years?
That's what I'm asking you. That's exactly what I want to discuss.
Are we in the neighborhood of $5 million a year? Does that sound like I'm in the ballpark, or you think it's going to be more than that?
Well, I will just tell you, in thinking about this, I would not go more than 4 years. That would be my max. 4 years.
I'm with you. I think 4 is the max.
Is the absolute max. Now let's get to the number. For a flat cap, a cap that doesn't look like it's going to go up anytime soon, for several more years, 4-year max would be what I'm willing to do, and $5 million per year would be the most I'd be willing to do. So basically 4 for 20.
I think we're
4 for 20.
I kind of like that. I might sign up for that. I think he'd be worth that. And the only thing you're wary, and that's why I would try to keep it to maximum 4 years, is I just don't want Ryan Ellis, Roman Josi, and Matthias Ekholm all to be sitting there around age 35 at the same time and not quite be the players they were when they were 26, 27, because it's basically inevitable, right? We all hope they're going to be beating Father Time, but all three would be under contract at that age, and that might not look pretty, right? For the percentage of the salary cap that they're taking up, right? Roman Josi is $9 million a year. Ryan Ellis is $6.2 million a year. And then we're talking Ekholm around, in the neighborhood of $5 million. And some people might think that's low. I don't know. He could probably test the open market and find out. But in a flat cap world, you got a chance to get him a little bit less than what you could have pre-pandemic. But that's a lot. That would be, Roman Josi right now is about 15% of your cap. Ryan Ellis is about 10%. So if you put Ekholm up in that, just under 10% range, you're getting dangerously close, about a third of your salary cap in 3 players who are in their 30s. I don't know.
I'll tell you what I'm willing to do.
That sounds great to me.
I'll tell you what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to give a little bit more to make it a 3-year deal. I'm willing to go 5.5 for 3 years.
I'm with you. I think I'm with you on that.
Those are the offers. That's what I'm offering.
Next year, right? Next year, this is the thing that you have to do with these contracts is you got to think next year, right? You want next year Josi, Ellis, and Ekholm in uniform for you. You need those 3 guys unless you're going to make a bold move for Seth Jones. That might change the game, right? That way you get a little younger, but then you have to invest in Seth Jones into his 30s, right? Because he's under contract for one more year, and then you would need to probably come up with a pretty high, I don't know if it's up Yossi territory, but it's not far behind, right? At least you would think on the open market, if he hit the open market, Seth Jones, he's going to get a pretty good deal. Now it's post-pandemic, it's flat cap, so maybe there's a little room for a discount there. But that's why I think these moves are extremely difficult and intriguing, because they're all together. In a vacuum, Matthias Ekholm is easily worth 4 years at $5 million a year. But what does it do to your overall outlook for the team beyond this year?
I would offer 4 for 20, but I would push, give you more money, give you a little bit of a raise. 3 years, 5.5 per.
3 years, 5.5 per. I think I could live with that.
I mean, it's not giving him more.
Sure.
It's not giving him more money in total. I understand, but I'd probably start with the 3 for 5.5. Was where I'd start.
And then after
and know
that,
my ceiling is 4 for 20.
Sure. And if you're doing that, then the question becomes, does that maybe increase the chances that somebody like Ryan Ellis ends up being moved to avoid having what we talked about, 3 defensemen that are all in their 30s?
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, it probably won't be this coming year, but down the road, I think that is going to be a difficult thing to have if you can't get a little bit younger in their roster. I think that's what complicates this thing, and it factors into Philip Forsberg. It factors into something that Adam Vingan wrote about today, and that's Mikael Granlund, right? He's probably even a bigger urgency because his contract is up now. He's about to hit the open market. So you got to try to play this game with him, too. And Adam did in his article. Did you see that? He was, he had a guy who does this. The range is between $4 and $5 million a year, I think, on what he would probably be worth. But again, flat cap. And then how many years for him? He's 29.
Will be 30 late in the regular season, February of next year, late February birthday. He'll be 30 next year. Well, right. What's his number? This year he played for 3.75 for a 1-year deal. What's his number? How many years are you giving him?
He deserves a raise. He deserves a raise, don't you think? He's earned a raise. If he's coming back to the Predators, I think that's a no-brainer. He's getting a raise. But how much? I would hope to keep it south of 4.75. Perfect world.
I was going to offer 3 for 4.5.
3 years?
3 years, 4.5.
I think you're. I think we're talking. I think that we're talking now. What does he think he can get on this open market? He knows he is a fit. They raved about him. The coaching staff loves him. He knows he is going to play a key role in Nashville if he stays. He knows the system. He fits the system. He played as important a role as you can play as a forward. How much is that worth to him? Of course, you also have Nashville's ability to stretch your dollar a little bit still, right? That's still something to consider, the taxes and all that.
Yep. That's where I'm thinking 3 years, 4.5 per.
Okay, so you got Ekholm 3 years, 5.5. You've got Granlund 3 years, 4.5 ish.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I think those are 2 good contracts. I think I'm signing up for those.
Okay. Now Philip Forsberg. What do you do
I think
there?
that's manageable. Oh boy. Trickier.
Going to be 27.
Does he deserve
this
a
season.
raise? He makes $6 million a year. Makes $6 million a year. Does he deserve a raise?
Yes.
I think whether you think he does or not, he's going to get a raise, because if he hits the open market, he's going to get a raise. So is it $7 million a year?
I'm not going any higher.
Let's look at the team structure. Roman Yossi makes 9. Duchesne and Johansson make 8. Ryan Ellis makes 6.25. Is he more valuable than Duchesne and Johansson?
Now, keep this in mind. Now, I know we reference this all the time, but I'm sorry. He was a general manager, so when a general manager, says those things, you can reference it because, especially if you agree with it. Just because you pay somebody a certain amount of money doesn't make them that type of player. So it doesn't mean you have to, because an agent is saying, well, so-and-so makes this and so-and-so makes that, and my client's better than them, so they deserve at least that, if not more. Because you then have the right to say, well, I didn't say I agree with those amounts. Those amounts we don't agree with. Just because that player got that amount doesn't mean that I have to agree with what they got paid. Good for them. It doesn't make them worth that contract. And so I don't have to pay because somebody is making something that I don't believe in. And so just because somebody is getting paid a certain amount doesn't mean that I have to pay you a certain amount because you think your client is better. I happen to agree with you. I think your client is better. But it doesn't mean I have to pay for the bad contracts that were signed, contracts that you're overpaying somebody. So with that being said, do I think so? Yes, but it doesn't mean that I have to pay more because of other contracts. And Floyd Reese has told us that over the years. You know that. You remember.
Oh, yeah. No, I think, but you've just, I think, outlined a classic debate that has happened in many sports, in many contract negotiations. That exact dynamic. Because I do think if you're the agent for Philip Forsberg, you're going to point out you've got Matt Duchesne and Ryan Johansson making $8 million. My guy is better than those guys. He's more valuable to the team than those two guys. That's the argument he's going to make, right? He's in Philip Forsberg's corner. He's fighting for every dollar he can get. So I do think that's going to come up in the discussion. Now you're going to come back with the Floyd Reese, right? But then we have to meet in the middle there. And you also have to try to gauge if he were to hit the open market next summer, would he, what are people going to pay at that point when the cap is probably still going to be flat? True? Even next summer, that's what the speculation is. Elliott keeps telling us it's going to be 2 or 3 years before there's really any movement on the cap.
Yep.
Yeah. And Matt Duchesne and Ryan Johansson were in a wide open market when they signed, right? The market was really cooking for the players at that point. That's how they got into that $8 million range as much as what they earned, right? So Philip Forsberg's not in the same market as those two guys, and you have to figure that in. So are we talking 7.5?
I don't know. Tell me the years, and then I'll tell you.
I think it's going to be at least 6.
Yeah.
Now remember, he could get 7 on the open market. He could get 8 maximum by the Predators.
Yeah, I'm not.
So you're saying you don't like the idea of 8.
You know how I feel about. You know how I feel.
You don't like
that.
the idea of 8. I get it.
I don't like the long-term deals. I don't love them at all.
But
I've
he
been
could
pretty
get
consistent.
one, though.
Predators need to get out of that business. It's just
it's
just unstable. It's an unstable business to be in.
You're right. You're right. But you
can't
what
predict.
did you say earlier, though? You said it just takes one crazy GM. If he were to hit the open market, I think that crazy GM is out there that would give him the full
fine,
7.
But that doesn't mean you do something because a crazy GM will do something, right? You can't react to what the crazy GM.
Are you willing to let him walk, though?
Did we not go down that when we used all the baseball references? Well, because that was your classic comeback. Well, if you don't do it, somebody else will. Okay, then let somebody else do it. I mean, no,
but
I don't want
Forsberg
to.
We're talking about.
I know. I don't want. I understand that. I'm not putting out there that I'm saying that they should lose Philip Forsberg or they should turn the other way and say, well, fine. No, that's not it at all. I definitely think they should keep him here 100%.
All right.
I just think
we're kicking this around.
You've got to get out of the 7 and 8 year deal. You just got to get out of that business. It's just it's unstable. More times than not, that contract will never live up to the expectations. It just is. That's any sport. It's not just hockey. 7 or 8.
Yes, I agree.
Guaranteed contracts
right?
are probably not going to ever live up to them. That's just the way it is. So do you want to be in that business? Do you want to be in that business 2, 3, 4 times over? That's the stuff you get. That's what you got to ask yourself.
Roman Josi, at the end of that contract, he's not going to be the same player that he is today. They knew that when they signed up for it. You're trying to get as much as you can, but that's what it took to sign him. That is the choice. So, all right, I think you and I agree that we're in the ballpark for Ekholm and Granlund, and in our minds of what we think the ballpark is. Okay, but I think we're going to have a little disagreement here on Forsberg. What is your offer to Forsberg?
I don't know. I get I don't know. I get jumpy when it comes to these long-term deals. I don't like them. I get
6 years.
I mean, there's just no way me personally, if I were the GM, that I would offer more than 6 years. I just wouldn't. It's just like I said.
Okay,
are you going to go
going 6?
Are you going to go 4 deep on your roster with 7 and 8 year contracts? Me, I'm out. I'm not doing it. I don't care how special they are. I don't care how much you like them. It's just like I said. It just usually ends up being bad. It ends poorly. And so why do you want to put yourself in that position? Because rarely do they ever work out where everybody feels good for the length of the contract. And it's just – so I'm not willing to go more than 6. And I get – like I said, I don't even love that. But Philip Forsberg will be 27. There's nothing wrong with that. That's in the prime of his career. And for the most part, his entire career, he's been relatively healthy. He's hit a bad spell here in the last couple of seasons. But overall, he's been pretty healthy. He's been playing full seasons. Like I said, the last couple, not so much. I guess the last 3, really. So I guess the beginning stage of the career, he was available all the time, and then the last 3 years. So then there's going to be people, and it's the right of the GM to go, yeah, but you're going the wrong direction at this point. So why would I think that it's going to go back the other way the older you get? So you've been missing time at 25, 26, or 24, 25, and 26 years of age, and you think at 27 and 28 and 29 and 30, you think it's going to go back the other way when you were 22? How do you expect me to believe that? I think the GM has every right to do that, to say that.
Okay.
Don't you think?
So 6 years, are you going $7.5 million a year?
How about 6 for 42?
6 for 7. Okay. I think that's low. I think it's going to take more. Now let me throw it back to you this way, Darren. You're timid about entering into a long-term deal because there's other ones on the books. But what if I told you that if one of those contracts was off the books, would you feel better about putting Forsberg in that slot?
Yes, much better.
I think that has to be part of the thinking.
Yep, different
that has to be part of the thinking. Because it's one less guy that's taking up a big chunk of your cap for the next 5+ years.
Yep, different conversation. If you're telling me one of the big, long contracts goes away. Yep, different mindset. Good stuff. That'll do it for our show today. Enjoy the rest of what looks like a pretty nice Thursday here in Middle Tennessee. Continue to be safe. We want you back with us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to close out the week. Stay tuned. Stillman & Company. That's next.